LBC.
Good evening, it's Nigel Farage here. I'm with you for the next 3 hours. We're going to be talking about MPs. Are they special beings? Do they deserve protection? If they're arrested, should it be made public? Are they getting above themselves? I've got an endowment mortgage. It ends in May. I keep getting red letters. The stock markets are collapsing. Have I got a problem? Am I in trouble? The voice of the city, David Buick, will be in here discussing that with me and many of you who are probably quite worried too. And Mr. Cameron is giving a speech at 9 p.m. in Hamburg after a meeting with his boss, his fellow European partner, Angela Merkel. Is Cam getting a good deal? This time next week he'll be back from Brussels. Is it time for us to say goodbye, Brussels? Right, now where we begin is members of Parliament this week had a debate about what happens to them if they're arrested. Now, at the moment, if an MP's arrested, the Speaker of the House of Commons, John Bercow, announces the name of the person that's been arrested. But this week there's been a change to the law, proposed by the Justice Secretary, and now, if an MP's arrested, it will not be made public. That'll be anonymous until they're charged. Now, the argument is that MPs deserve a right to privacy under our old friend, the Human Rights Act. But surely, if you're an MP, you're in the public domain. Surely you're different to an ordinary person. Or should everybody be innocent until they're proven guilty? And is it wrong in the modern world that people with names like Nick could accuse field marshals or police officers or politicians or comedians of all sorts of heinous crimes without perhaps any evidence at all? So let's talk about members of Parliament. Should they have that right to privacy? Should they be anonymous? Or is it a bit worrying that MPs vote on a law for themselves and only one MP and the whole of the House of Commons objects? Are they getting above themselves? Do they perhaps want to have the rights and privileges that MEPs have? I'm an MEP, and as this hour develops, I'll tell you what the situation in Brussels is, and you may be very shocked, and you must keep knives and sharp objects away from you, because the way we're looked after in Brussels is extraordinary. Now, to get in touch, what you need to do is to call 0345 6060 973, or tweet at LBC, or text 84850. Should MPs get special treatment? Should they get the same rights as the general public, or are they different because they're in the public domain? And our first caller this evening is going to be Blair from Camberley. Blair, good evening.
Good evening, Nigel. I would just like to say these MPs special treatment. I mean, they get away 10% a rise, and everybody else gets 1%. They've got expenses. I've got to pay everything out of my wages for anything I've got to buy. I don't get expenses for these things. I've not got a subsidised canteen. I've not got a subsidised bar. If I get charged with anything, I get charged with it, and if I get caught dwindling my expenses in my company, I'm fired on the spot. I'm not still there serving as an MP.
No, but Blair, the argument surely is that these people are running the country. They've got a huge weight of responsibility on their shoulders. They've got their... Now, you're laughing. You sound very cynical about this.
Look at the state we're in.
All right. Do you know what? You know, it's a fair cop there, Blair. But you know, they've got... I mean, they work all the hours God sends. They're conscientious, honest people. They work on behalf of their constituents. They have big decisions to make on the law. I mean, shouldn't they be reasonably paid for doing that?
They shouldn't be overpaid the way they are. And if you are, what's your wages for if everything else you can claim on expenses, paper clips and toothbrushes? I mean, it's ridiculous. It really is.
Yeah.
But I mean, Nigel, just to let you know, me and you are definitely going to be parting to get out Europe. I'm definitely voting to get out.
Are you?
Aye, certainly.
Very good, very good. Well, Blair, I'm going to be voting to get out, and one of the reasons I want to get out is actually I want our MPs to do more work. And the reason I say this is because actually 75% of the laws that are made in this country every year are not made by our MPs. They're made by the institutions of Brussels. So I think in terms of MPs' pay, going up 10%, I'm not particularly sympathetic to that. But Blair, thank you very much, and I'll see you on the hustings. We go on to a second caller, which is Melina in Bermondsey.
Hello, Nigel.
Hello.
I would like to say, please, that if we're going to have this law for the MPs under Human Rights Act, that they can't be named until they're charged, then I think it should be for everybody, not just for the select few. The human rights, after all, is for everybody. So I don't understand why it's only for them, but not for the rest of us, mere mortals.
Well, actually, just to be fair about this, you know, if you were arrested tomorrow, Melina, and accused of something, that would not be made public until the moment at which you were charged, and then it becomes much more a matter of public record.
But what about the case then with Cliff Richard, when the police tipped off the BBC, and they filmed all his house with the police raiding it? The previous Prime Minister, he got named by that chap called Nick with the false allegations.
Oh, the Cliff Richard thing. I mean, Melina, the Cliff Richard thing was absolutely disgusting, and I agree with you 100%. And as I mentioned in the intro, you know, on the say-so of some bloke called Nick, you know, we get Edward Heath's name, and I'm not a big Heath fan, but we get Edward Heath's name traduced, and we finish up with the remarkable, you know, public spectacle where we understand that Field Marshal Bramall, who is, I think he's 92 years old, a decorated D-Day veteran, and 22 police officers arrive at his house to search for material, and of course they find nothing. So, you know, I mean, you know, I agree with you. I do agree with you that the law should be the same for everybody. But do you think maybe our MPs are looking for slightly special privileges?
I think they are looking for special privileges, yes. But the law has to be equal for everybody.
No, it's a fair point.
Absolutely, everybody, regardless of your status, because otherwise you're going to have havoc created on the streets. The law of the land is for everybody, regardless of your status.
No, you make that point. You make that point absolutely beautifully. Thank you very much indeed. And we move on to Holly in Billericay. Hello, Holly.
Hiya. How are you?
Hello, I'm well, thanks.
Good. My point is, if anyone was to be arrested and if they were to not be charged, in effect, they haven't done anything wrong, so why should it be public knowledge? If I make an accusation against you and there was no proof against it, then no one should know because you haven't been charged with a crime.
I get what you're saying, Holly. You know, innocent. So what you're saying really is we should all be innocent until proven guilty, and we should not be, making scapegoats of Cliff Richard or members of Parliament or Simon Danchuk or whoever it may be, because until they're actually charged, it should not be in the public domain. I get that.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think it works the wrong way at the moment. I feel that in every walk of life, you're guilty until you're proven innocent, which is in effect wrong. If I, for example, was to be arrested and it was to be a false claim, and then I was to go and apply for a job and they were to do a check on me, they could say I was
But
arrested.
RMP's different, Holly. RMP's different. Are they in a different category? Because what they've willingly done is to go into the public domain.
We all do a job. The same goes for celebrities. If the celebrities were to be arrested, then, you know, they're in the public domain.
Yeah.
They're probably more in the public domain than some MPs.
Yeah, well...
It's known nationwide.
Well, I mean, they are, anyway, the argument would be that MPs are very well paid, they put their head over the parapet, and they should be able to accept what's coming to them. But you're making an argument, indeed, as Million did in the previous call, that everything should be fair, and we should all be treated equally before the law. I get the point. I mean, I really, really do. Thank you. What I'd like to do is just to tell you, as an MEP, that things are rather different. So, as a member of the European Parliament, I effectively have immunity from prosecution if I can make the argument that the charge of which I've been, accused of, is something that I did in pursuance of my job as an MEP. So we get MEPs try to claim immunity from prosecution for speeding offences or parking offences, or indeed very much more serious things, because they claim that that's in pursuance of their job as an MEP. And these decisions come to us in the European Parliament, and sometimes the immunity is lifted. If you're Eurosceptic, they'll lift the immunity so you can be prosecuted, but very often the immunity is kept. And I think we've given our MEPs the most extraordinary degree of protection. And I do agree with Holly, Melina. I do think, actually, we should all be treated the same before the law. My worry is, was this done by MPs slightly arrogantly? Are they getting a bit above themselves? And would they rather like to be like MEPs? And I can also tell you, as an MEP, that I'm entitled to a special passport. It is a passeport diplomatique. It has the European Union's ring of stars on the front of it. And it means that with that passport, I can jump the queues at airports. I can be, treated as a senior being. I think it means I can set fire to France, and they can't really arrest me. I'm not sure. But my goodness me, if you're an elected politician in Brussels, in France, you are on a completely different range of privileges to an MP. But the flavour of those calls was that actually we should treat them all equally. However, are they paid too much? Are we getting a good deal? Do we respect our MPs? I'm not sure. Lots more of your calls coming up. We go to the break.
From the LBC Travel Centre, good evening, I'm Andy Lake. On the M25, long delays clockwise between Potters Bar and Enfield, that's after an accident earlier on today. Also long queues in both directions between the M3 and Maple Cross. Solid delays between Junction 15 and Junction 12 within that stretch. Also slow clockwise between Dartford and Darren. The lanes closed there for barrier repairs after an accident yesterday. The M4's queuing coming away from London, that's just after Junction 2 at Brentford to the Hammersmith flyover following a breakdown. TfL have severe delays tonight as well, that's between Liverpool Street and Shinfield, all to do with a problem with the signals. Keeping London moving. More live travel updates at lbc.co.uk.
LBC. Wearing glasses can be a bother. Hiding your face, fogging up with every hot cuppa, growing legs and walking away from where you left them only moments ago. Could you see life without them? Find out from the eye care specialists trusted by thousands of patients. Talk to Optegra Eye Health Care to learn whether lens replacement or laser eye surgery could help you say goodbye to your glasses. Book your free consultation now at optegra.com.
Since the dawn of time, man has changed his car using the trade-in. He's been doing it the same way since, forever. But then along came modern man and woman who tried something new and sold to WeBuyAnyCar.com. Then use the money to get a better deal on their next car. Thank goodness for progress, eh? Change the way you sell your car. Enter your reg number now at WeBuyAnyCar.com. Terms and conditions apply. See WeBuyAnyCar.com/info.
Prepare to succeed in 2016 with Staples. Right now, you can get an unmissable 25% off Toshiba computing. That's 25% off all laptops and tablets bought in store. Get the technology you want for 25% less. Offer ends Sunday. Shop in over 100 stores and save with Staples.
There's such a fuss made about celebrities these days. The ones from the soaps, from reality TV, the ones who are famous for being famous. Well, Lloyds Bank think it's time to celebrate the right people. The plumbers, the florists, the architects, Britain's small businesses. And that's why they've designed their new business current account. It's straightforward and easy to use, it offers free electronic payments, and it comes with support from the Lloyds Business Management team. So Britain's small businesses can keep doing what they do best.
Find out more at lloydsbank.com/business current account. Lloyds Bank PLC. Free electronic payments conditions apply.
Employers across the UK, however small the business, will soon have to offer a workplace pension. Don't ignore the workplace pension. It's the law. Visit workplacepensions.gov.uk.
Imagine if Noel Edmonds wins this Saturday's £32 million jackpot. Anyone can win with Lotto. Please, don't let it be him. Get your ticket today. Estimated jackpot. Games, rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
Getting to know you, getting to know about...
If you're thinking of selling your home, or you're searching for a new one, why not drop into your local Leaders branch? We take the time to get to know what your priorities are, and then we make them our priorities. Find out more at leaders.co.uk, or pop in today and we can start getting to know you. Leaders, Sales and Lettings, connecting people with property.
Are you becoming too high profile? The shadow leader of the Labour Party?
These stories break. It completely disrupts my gardening schedule, I have to say.
Ken Livingstone and David Mellor. Saturday mornings from 10 on LBC.
Welcome back with me, Nigel Farage. We're talking about members of Parliament and whether they should have anonymity if they're arrested, or if it was your MP that was arrested, potentially for having been done something really rather nasty, wouldn't you like to know? Our last caller said we should all be equal before the law, but we're now going to go to Phil in West Kensington, who I think takes a different view. Phil, good evening.
Hi, Nigel. Yeah, it's a matter of my rights and their rights.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still in a case 4 years down the road. I live with chronic illness. I nearly died last November. I'm still fighting. I have the fight in me. I will not give up. I don't believe I believe the government has given us Human Rights Act, the Disability Act, Discrimination Act, and the Housing Act. Yet you know something? We have no way to access any of it. We have no way to protect our lives.
Right, but how?
This government, yet the government is quite, able to, when they're discriminated against, when they have something said against them by the police, they can act immediately. They have the affordability to be able to do it. I'm on benefit. I'm on DLA. I'm on ESA.
No, sure. I mean, Phil, look, compared to you,
in this community at all, I don't feel valued in society. I'm deemed a DSS person that takes money from.
Yeah, but Phil, hang on a second. We can talk about people having a very tough time in their life, and you are, yes. and you've had a bad time. You've been seriously ill, and I wish you well. But the real question here is now MPs are in a better position than you're in. They've got a basic salary of about £74,000 a year. It's due to go up by a further 10%, and I get that, and I know that. But my specific question, is if your local MP in Kensington was arrested, on a charge of, I don't know, should we say, texting an underage girl, inappropriate things, would you think that as their constituent that you've got a right to know, or they've got a right to be protected and to be innocent until a charge is placed?
Absolutely, but so do I. I went to my MP. I was arrested by the police, false charges. I was injured by the police. I've had to fight my case. It's 4 years down the road.
Yep.
My case is with the IPCC, with the appeals. The next step is my case has to be. I'm demanding.
But Phil, you've had a tough time. I get that, and I'm sorry for that, but I really don't think that is directly relevant to what we're talking about here, and that is the status of MPs. And I thank you. And we go on to Joe in Southfields. Joe, good evening.
Yes, hello, good evening, Nigel. It's not really a question, as I understand it, of law here. We're talking about, somebody being arrested. If it's Joe Public, nobody's going to care that much.
Yeah.
But it's more to do with the media somehow getting wind of this information and putting it into the public domain. So if you're talking about a point of law here, it's a red herring, because the law is already you're innocent until proven guilty. But if you're having trial by the media, as you know very well, Nigel.
I do. I believe me, I do. Absolutely.
Poor darling.
I think you're right, actually. Do you know what? I think in many ways, what Parliament has passed is theoretical. Because if, 10 police, turn up on my drive tomorrow evening to arrest me for something, there's going to be a lot of noise, and the neighbours are all going to see, and everyone's going to talk to everybody, and before you know it, it'll be on social media, and I cannot see that anything would stop a newspaper from reporting a fact like that. Because
it's a gift. But, I mean, even far sort of people that are far less famed as yourself, if they are an MP, it's somebody gets wind of it, it gets onto social media. There's no... that barrier towards putting it out there in the wider world sort of went away when the internet became sort of a thing, an instrument that pretty much anybody could use. If you haven't got one home, you can go to your local library. So anything can be reported at any time. So, it's not a point of law, this. It's a point
Yeah.
of...
No, I mean...
Get the story they think they can run with, they will.
No, you're being pragmatic about the modern world that we live in, and of course we've seen people, not so much MPs, but we've seen very prominent public figures get super injunctions. You know, and this has been a couple of Premier League footballers, a couple of big FTSE 100. Well, actually, if you've got lots of money, the law in this country can be very, very useful, as Robert Maxwell proved for decades. Because for decades he injuncted and he stopped people writing the truth about what he was doing with those pensioners' money. And so you're right. I mean, I'm afraid, you know, it is a country where the richer you are, the more the law's on your side. That is certainly true. But your basic point that whatever law they pass to protect MPs, anonymity, frankly, in the modern world with iPhones and the internet is irrelevant. Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah. So, and also, it was Robert Maxwell was pre all of this.
Yep.
So that's how come, you know, he didn't end up being outed. But, you know, the more money you have, the better counsel you can afford, and they can, you know, find loopholes, and, you know, they're not supposed to coach anybody, but you could, you know, if you're splitting hairs, say that they do coach people that can afford that level of counsel because they can pay.
It's, no, it's one rule for the rich and another rule for all the others. You're right. Joe makes a very good practical point. You know, if I'm arrested, or anybody in Parliament's arrested, people are going to see, it's going to be on the internet. It's very difficult to keep these things quiet, and I totally agree with that point. Mark in Chelsea, good evening. What have you got to say on this issue?
Hi there, Nigel. How are you?
Yeah, good, thanks.
No, what I was saying to your producer was that when, unless you're arrested and actually charged with something, then it doesn't matter if you're an MP, an MEP, or a person in the street. But there's been loads of cases of where women claim rape on someone and it's proven it's completely innocent. But the thing is, Nigel, with that, the mud sticks, and people think it was like the case of Lord Brummel now. At the end of the day, you know, Sir Bernard Hoganell's never apologised. He's going to have to apologise somewhere along the line.
Yeah, it wasn't the only case, was it, Mark? Because we had the same thing with Leon Britton, didn't we? Do you remember that? Yeah.
And you had Sir Robert McAlpine. Sally Burko paid the price for that. The Speaker of the House, his wife.
Yes, and that, of course, links into our previous caller, Joe, because that, of course, again, was social media.
Yeah.
They were tweets that Sally Burko had put out that led to that court case, and I've no doubt in the end cost her a very, very great deal of money. But you take the basic view, Mark, that we're all innocent until proven guilty. And
definitely.
Yeah, I have to say, I do tend to work. But let me ask you a broader question. I mean, do you respect our members of Parliament? Do you respect our political class? Do you think they're paid fairly? Do you think they're doing a good job?
Well, it depends. Most of them like to, well, now they can't feel that they're expensive, you know, at the end of the day, Nigel. But there's one question I want to ask you, something.
Oh, go on, then.
An MEP, you was talking about you could do speeding and you can get away with all those sort of crimes, yeah?
Yeah.
You can actually get off. What about if an MEP is downloading or whatever, saying they're doing it as a research for paedophilia? Can they get away with that?
If an MEP was arrested and charged even with that, they could go to the European Parliament and they could ask and they could beg their fellow MEPs to maintain their immunity from prosecution. Whether they get it or not would be a matter for the European Parliament. In theory, they could get it. And I saw a British MEP who was a fraudster who, by continually claiming anonymity, was able to delay fair treatment from the law for about 3 to 3.5 years. So MEPs are in a very privileged position, but remember that in the European Union, everybody is very grand and very important. And not just do we have special passports as MEPs, but when we go downstairs, there's a fleet of big black Mercedes motor cars to take us anywhere we want in Brussels and Strasbourg. Nothing is too good for the new ruling classes of Europe. There's some confusion, I think, between arrest and being charged. And we've got an ex-police officer called Roger from West Molesey, who I hope is going to clarify this for us.
Yes, hello, Nigel. Firstly, can I just thank you for what you're trying to do for this country?
Well, that's sweet of you, thank you.
I'm 2 years old, and I've seen much better days, and I really support you 100% in what you're doing.
Thank you.
Right. I think there's a big confusion. When people get arrested, I don't think their name should appear at all until they're actually charged. And arrest and charge, nowadays, they have to go to the Crown Prosecution Service to get permission to charge.
Yep.
And if it was a police officer or a judge or an MP, they're all the same. If they get arrested, their name shouldn't appear until such time that they're charged, but that should apply to everybody.
Fine. No, Roger, you make the distinction absolutely correctly and fairly, and I think you're right. And the vast majority of you that have called in this first half an hour, have thought MPs should be treated the same as all the rest of us. The difficulty, as Joe pointed out, is because of social media. Keeping it quiet is really, really difficult. But Roger, thank you very much indeed for that. Lots more of your calls and comments coming up. We'll continue with the theme, should MPs get the same rights as the general public when it comes to the law? Should they be innocent until proven guilty? But I'm really keen to discuss more. Do we think MPs are paid too much? Are they paid too little? Do we respect them? Are they doing a good job? Do they actually represent us? Or are they a complete and utter shower? Call me on 0345 60 60 973. And right now, we go to the 7:30 news and headlines with Rupert Butte.
Serial killer Levi Belfield has denied ever confessing to the murder of Millie Dowler. A medical student has admitted planning to carry out an Islamic State-inspired attack in London. 22-year-old Tariq Hussain from West London has pleaded guilty at the Old Bailey. And 6 schoolgirls are in hospital after being hit by a car in Liverpool outside their school. None are in a life-threatening condition. A driver in her 80s was treated at the scene. LBC weather. Most places dry and clear this evening, a low of 1 Celsius. Tomorrow, cold and cloudy with patchy rain, a high of 5 degrees. The LBC Travel News is next.
From the LBC Travel Centre, good evening, I'm Andy Lake. Still a few issues with the M25. It's queuing because of an accident now clockwise from the M11 to Waltham Abbey. The road's been blocked totally by this, so it's beginning to look very heavy indeed. Also long queues in both directions between junction 12 for the M3 and 17 for Maple Cross. Solid queues along that stretch. Still not looking great on the M4 either. It's queuing heading out of town from just after junction 2 at Brentford to the Hammersmith flyover, all because of a broken down car. As for the rails, still severe delays on TfL between Liverpool Street and Shenfield. That's all after a problem with the signals, keeping London moving. More live travel updates at lbc.co.uk.
This is LBC London.
Landlords. Direct Line guaranteed to beat any quote for the same cover. Can your landlord insurance do that? Search Direct Line Landlord. New customers only. Qualifying criteria apply. Underwritten by UK Insurance Limited.
I know. The state pension is changing.
I know. How much you get will still depend on your national insurance record. And don't forget you may still have a private pension to consider too.
I know. I'll be able to see how much I'm likely to receive and understand what I can do to improve my state pension.
I know. If you reach state pension age on or after the 6th of April 2016, you'll be part of the new scheme.
Make sure you know the facts about the new state pension. Visit gov.uk/yourstatepension for more information.
We used to be high street estate agents, but now we're Purple Bricks. So out goes the commission, and in come the local property experts. Out go the office working hours, and in comes the 24/7. And out go the flashy socks, and in comes the... Hang on, don't make me lose the socks, Kenny.
Sell your property and you could save thousands with Purple Bricks.
Imagine if Noel Edmonds wins this Saturday's £32 million jackpot. Anyone can win with Lotto. Please, don't let it be him. Get your ticket today. Estimated jackpot. Games, rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
Hi, mate. You all right?
Oh, yeah, hello, mate. Look, I can't really talk now. I'm just having the new boiler put in.
I bet you're glad to see you back of that old one.
Well, actually, I got £400 for it from British Gas.
What, 400 quid?
Yeah.
That's more than I got for my old car.
Your old boiler's more valuable than you might think. When you buy a new boiler from British Gas before the 31st of March, we'll give you a £400 trade-in. Just visit britishgas.co.uk or call 0800 754 754. Conditions apply.
University fees. Broken washing machine. Parking fine. Like families, businesses need to be prepared for unexpected costs. That's why our Renault van range is now available with 4 years 0% APR, 4 years servicing, 4 years warranty, and 4 years roadside assistance. Renault vans.
Business users only. Deposit payable. Renault Finance hire purchase. Available until March 31st. Participating dealers only. Subject to status. Conditions apply. See Renault.co.uk/offers.
At Homebase, there's 20% off all Karcher pressure washers, like our Karcher K4 compact pressure washer. Was $149.99, now only $119.99. Homebase.
This is LBC with Nigel Farage.
Welcome back, and we're talking about members of Parliament and whether if they're arrested it should be put into the public domain, or whether they could be victims of people called Nick who make appalling accusations and potentially could really ruin someone's career or life. And we've seen it not just with MPs but with celebrities. And of course the trouble is, some of those celebrities that were arrested are now in prison, and we saw today that Rolf Harris now faces 7 more very, very serious accusations. But we've also seen with Lord Bramall and Leon Britton and others, the police perhaps acting in a heavy-handed way when actually there was no proper evidence at all. But it's MPs I'm particularly interested in, and I'm going to Jamie in Dartford. Good evening.
Evening, Nigel. How are you?
Hi, fine, thanks. Far away.
Well, when I first heard the topic come up, I was a little bit torn, because I think it should be fair that if it was a private matter, perhaps it should be left privately. And if it's something that was concerned the general public, it should be something that was left out to the public. And the reason I say that if it's a public matter, if you can take into an example, me and you, we go out for a drink one night.
Well, that's not a bad idea, Jamie. Yeah, I mean, I'm really up for that, you know.
And you being if you was a member of Parliament rather than an MEP, but you got a little bit tipsy, and then you decided you want to have your way with me. And
what? Where's this going? I mean, Jamie, we haven't even reached the watershed yet. But go on.
And it's an example, but and it's unconsensual because I don't want to do it. But for instance, you want to force yourself upon me. I would go to the police station and I would make a claim that X, Y, Z happened, and then you get arrested.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's no evidence, even though it happened, and you get let off. That would be an injustice itself. But if it was made public and there was other victims, it would then bring truth out into the public domain, which that's where I'm leading to. We need to get these things made out public, because it does affect the public, especially if.
Do you think that
things that happen to more than one person? How do I know how would someone know that I was making a claim and they didn't feel comfortable because they didn't think that they were the only person?
Do you think that MPs and public figures should be open to a higher level of scrutiny than everybody else?
Yes. Because I think they're probably the most corrupt people in the country.
Yeah. Well, I listen. I mean, look, ever since the expenses scandal, there are, Jamie, a lot of people like you who are really deeply contemptuous of our MPs and our political class, and I completely understand that, and I get that, although I have to say that the potential hypothetical scenario that you put up there was not one I'd ever considered before, and it is a bit early in the evening, and I will be having a very strong drink after this show to think it through. And thank you. We go on to Richard in South Croydon. Richard, good evening.
Good evening, Nigel. What I wanted to say was this. MPs should be scrutinised. They're in a public office, and they should be scrutinised. What I dislike is somebody like a radio presenter like Paul Gambaccini.
Yeah.
I enjoy his show. And he was ruined.
Yes, he was.
Press.
Yes, he was. Yes, he was. He went through an horrendous time, Richard, and indeed, we've said it before, but it bears saying again, doesn't it? I mean, the Cliff Richard thing was the most extraordinary scene, wasn't it? Where,
who was responsible for this?
Well, now, it would seem to me that somehow the BBC knew what the police were about to do in the case of Cliff Richard, hence the helicopter being up in the air. And the films of it being taken. And I mean, look, Richard, I do agree with you. You know, in theory, people's lives should not be ruined by false accusations. But in some areas of life, the police are so sensitive about some of this underage abuse because of Savile and all the awful things that we've seen.
We all should be.
Well, yeah, no, I agree with that. But the problem is that you know, if MPs are given, as they've given themselves, in theory, anonymity, and if we try to extend that principle to Paul Gambaccini or Cliff Richard or any other famous figure, I agree with you in principle, Richard, that you know, that's the right thing to do. Otherwise, people's lives can be ruined by these accusations. But I'll say it again. I honestly think that our caller Joe earlier put a finger on it, that actually in the modern world, with the internet, with CCTV cameras all over the place, with iPhones, I think it's pretty difficult for anybody in public life, if they're arrested, even on a false accusation, to keep that quiet. And I think that is, I'm afraid, it's a fact of the modern world, in my opinion. But Richard, thank you very much for your call. And we go on to Jordan in Bromsgrove. Good evening.
Hi there, Nigel.
Hi.
I'd just like to reiterate what the earlier caller said, actually. I'm fully behind you as well. I saw you on Question Time last night, and you looked every bit the able statesman.
Oh, gosh. Oh, gosh. I hope I'm not getting too respectable, Jordan. I mean, that's quite a worry. But so tell me, what do you think about MPs?
Well, I was thinking about it, and I did a sales-related job a couple of years back. And I think I'd like to draw the comparison to Mr. Cameron's immigration promise.
Yeah.
So he says, we will reduce immigration to the tens of thousands. No ifs, no buts. If we don't deliver, you can kick us out. And that's fine. We could kick him out in theory, but the way the voting system works, it's unlikely. But the point is really, if I, you know, consistently missed my sales targets month by month, missed year by year, I would not expect to keep my job for any extended period of time. I think, sadly, the same rules don't seem to apply to MPs, and that they can, especially, you know, the Prime Minister, and they can consistently not deliver on their targets and get away with it. So I think that reduces the capacity for respect, really.
Well, I think, you know, you're right about the voting system in one way, that even when you get big swings at general elections from one to the other, 2/3 of seats are still safe seats, and the MP, whether he or she has delivered or done their job, is probably going to get returned. So I get that, and I understand that. But I specifically, Jordan, was asking this question of, you know, the trouble is, it's difficult to pay them on performance, isn't it? It's tough to pay them on performance, you know, and that is not something we're going to change overnight. But do they deserve, if your local MP is arrested and said to have done something awful, do you, Jordan, as a Bromsgrove constituent, should you have the right to know that or not?
Yeah, I think I'd agree with what previous callers have said, that with social media, I mean, whether we say yes or no is immaterial, but personally, I think that everybody before the law should be innocent until proven guilty.
Yeah,
I do feel, however, that if you're in a public office, in public position, you should be slightly more responsible, and obviously you can't do anything about false accusations, but
no.
You know, perhaps you should, you know, just try and make sure a bit more than the average Joe that you don't get arrested.
Yeah, no, fair enough. And don't put yourself in a silly spot. And by the way, just lastly, Jordan, quickly, are they paid about right? Too much? Too little?
No, as much as I don't hold much respect for our current set of MPs, I'd say they're paid about right.
Paid about right. OK, Jordan, no, thank you very much indeed for that, and have a great evening. We move on to Phil in Cardiff. Phil, hello.
Hey, Nigel, how are you doing?
Yeah, good, thanks.
I'm a big fan of yours, by the way, and just to echo the comments of the last chap, I enjoyed you showing up Leanne Wood and Karen Jones last night. Pretty good.
Yes, it was a very Welsh event, wasn't it? And
it was, yeah.
And I'm going to
came across very well, Nigel.
I'm going to talk a bit about that from 9 o'clock, because what I sensed, Phil, was that we were down further west than you in. Is Llanelli a good pronunciation? I'm not sure.
It was very, yes.
But I sense that actually the debate on this European question in South Wales and everywhere else is really kicking off. But anyway, my question, Phil, about MPs and their pay.
So I think, Nigel, you have to separate the vocation from the people. So I think there's some people at the moment that are MPs that are grossly overpaid. For example, I was listening to Jess Phillips last night spouting utter rubbish on television. I was incensed at some of the things she had to say. But if you look at it as a vocation, I don't think the vocation is well paid enough, because what happens is, if you're worth your salt in the private sector, you generally get on and you can earn significantly more than an MP, and therefore the vocation financially becomes is a disincentive for you. And I think as a result, we miss out on having the best people who would otherwise get on in the private sector.
Well, you're quite right, Phil. If we paid more, we might attract better people. But I've got a problem with paying MPs more, and that is this. Given that 75% of our laws are made somewhere else,
absolutely,
perhaps we should cut their salary. Basically, pay should come with responsibility. So my proposal is we cut their pay by 75%, but if we leave the European Union and make our parliament sovereign again, not only do we pay them back that 75%, we'll pay them another 25% on top, because they'll actually be running our country again. And there's a good reason, Phil, to go out and vote for us to leave. Listen, thanks ever so much for the call. Lots more to come with me, Nigel Farage, here on LBC. Do we hold our MPs in high regard? Should they get the same treatment as the rest of the public? And at the top of the hour, I want to start talking about that looming financial crash, or has it happened already with the Japanese stock market down 20%? Perhaps it has. What does it mean for all the rest of us? That's all coming up with me after the break. Thank you.
From the LBC Travel Centre, good evening, I'm Andy Lake. The M25 still queuing because of an accident. That's clockwise from the M11 to Waltham Abbey. The road's been blocked totally, so it's beginning to look very heavy indeed. It's also looking slow clockwise from Dartford heading towards Darrenth. A lane remains closed there for barrier repairs after an accident yesterday. The North Circular is still queuing this evening. That's approaching the roadworks going on at Neasden. Delays still reaching back to the Medway underpass. And in Pimlico, Grosvenor Road's queuing approaching Vauxhall Bridge. That's heading through the roadworks towards Chelsea Bridge Road. Keeping London moving. More live travel updates at lbc.co.uk.
LBC.
When you need more space.
Think creatively. What could you use a log cabin for? A studio? A home office? A den for the kids? Creative Living will design and build a log cabin to suit your needs, even taking care of electricity and climate control. See for yourself at our 3 large cabin display villages in Surrey. Find out where at creativelivingcabins.co.uk.
Your own log cabin, handcrafted, the creative living way.
Wearing glasses can be a bother. Hiding your face, fogging up with every hot cuppa, growing legs and walking away from where you left them only moments ago. Could you see life without them? Find out from the eye care specialists trusted by thousands of patients. Talk to Optegra Eye Healthcare to learn whether lens replacement or laser eye surgery could help you say goodbye to your glasses. Book your free consultation now at optegra.com.
University fees. Broken washing machine. Parking fine. Like families, businesses need to be prepared for unexpected costs. That's why our Renault van range is now available with 4 years 0% APR, 4 years servicing, 4 years warranty, and 4 years roadside assistance. Renault vans. Business users only. Deposit payable. Renault Finance hire purchase. Available until March 31st. Participating dealers only. Subject to status. Conditions apply. See Renault.co.uk/offers.
Get it straight from Selco.
Selco.
It's where the trade go.
Get a real deal from Selco Builders Warehouse on a wide range of trade-quality building products. In February, get a real deal on 15 kilograms of Dunlop Ready Mix non-slip wall tile adhesive for only $6.99 ex-VAT. Now that's a real deal. See even more real deals and thousands of products in stock at selcobw.com. New branches now open in Southampton and Weybridge. Selco.
It's where the trade go.
I know. The state pension is changing.
I know. How much you get will still depend on your national insurance record. And don't forget you may still have a private pension to consider too.
I know. I'll be able to see how much I'm likely to receive and understand what I can do to improve my state pension.
I know. If you reach state pension age on or after the 6th of April 2016, you'll be part of the new scheme.
Make sure you know the facts about the new state pension. Visit gov.uk/yourstatepension for more information.
Galliard Apartments in Shoreditch from £695,000, complete 2019. The first 100 purchasers receive a 4% net rent guarantee for 3 years and free letting and management. Releasing 5 p.m. 17th of March. Call 0203 770 6300 or visit thestageshoreditch.com.
This is LBC with Nigel Farage.
Welcome back, and we're discussing, should MPs have anonymity if they're arrested? We're also talking about, are they paid too much, too little, and just generally how much regard or contempt they are held in. And our first caller after the break is Mark from Epping. Good evening.
Yeah, hi Nigel, how you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
Good. They definitely should be subject to the same rules that we are.
Mm-hmm.
Just because you're an MP doesn't mean you have good moral ground or anything at all. I mean, George Osborne, look at his brother, just got struck off. I'm sure they had the same upbringing. I'm sure they got the same parents. They were treated exactly the same. Doesn't guarantee you're a good person, does it?
No, it doesn't. But, I mean, I don't think we should judge George Osborne by his brother, do you?
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, look, if what happened if maybe they'd have reversed and George Osborne had become a doctor and his brother had become the Chancellor. He'd have still been the same person.
I'm not so sure about that. I mean, there are lots of people who have embarrassments somewhere in their family.
But it wasn't my point. Wasn't to target him. It was just to use him as the example because look, if you get one person that's falsely accused. Yes, it can ruin their life. Yes, it's terrible. But normally you find these people that are abusing, or the abusers, are prolific. And there may be 15 to 20 people's lives that a proper abuser has destroyed.
So the argument is that a little bit of sunlight on this and suddenly lots of other people come forward and a case is made and a baddie gets nicked and goes to prison. And in some ways...
Absolutely.
Yeah, in some ways, that's what happened with Savile, wasn't it, really? Because there were hundreds of people out there who had basically kept it quiet for 30 or 40 years, and when they saw other people with the courage to go forward, they then had the guts to go forward. So I do get that. And I do understand that. But couldn't it also be grossly unfair on an MP who was accused of something entirely false that could perhaps, cause a marriage breakup and ruin their lives?
Yeah, it could. Most definitely. But you've got to outweigh what's the worst, the greater evil is 20 people's lives, 30 people's lives destroyed, or one person. If it's found to be unfounded, then the press should give front page and just say, yes, it was falsely accused. There's nothing wrong with this at all, nothing to answer.
Oh, you're a hard man, Mark, aren't you?
Okay, but I've got something else to go on the MPs as well. Because let's face it, most of these MPs, especially on the front bench, they're sorted anyway. They're millionaires. They're not doing this for the money. They're doing this for the deals they can do under the table.
Right. Now, this is quite rich stuff, but go on. All right. You may be right. You may not be,
Listen, I don't know. I'm a cab driver.
Right.
Who's destroying me, yeah?
Oh, yeah.
This is... Okay, so... Yeah. I mean, you go through it all. It goes to the very top here, Cameron. He's got connections with everyone who's high up in Uber. You're telling me that this is all straight? No way in the world.
Yeah, I know that, but the fairest point you make, Mark, actually, is that many of them, right? Many of them have never had a job in their lives, and they've gone straight from university into research offices and into Parliament. And you're right, some of them are rich enough never ever to have needed. To have done a proper job. But it was interesting, this week there was a Member of Parliament called William Ragg, who was a 29-year-old Conservative MP. He represents a seat up in Greater Manchester. And he said, coming into Parliament fresh, he, frankly, on the money, couldn't contemplate buying a property or even renting anywhere decent in London. And so he's moved in with his parents. And do we feel sorry for William? I can feel anger out there amongst LBC listeners thinking these guys are well paid. But it is an interesting point. Do we pay MPs enough or don't we pay them enough? And, I don't know. We go on to Jez in Ashford. Jez, good evening.
Hello. Absolute pleasure to speak to you. I've been dying to speak to you.
Right. Go on then.
But I really wanted to talk about a different subject, but I'm not going to. To me, it's everybody should have anonymity until Like you said, it's going to be incredibly difficult for some people, depending on how much the spotlight is on you. But everybody should, until they've been proven guilty, especially about certain allocations. But yes. That's about it. As to whether people get paid money, I don't know. My rent is £1,000 a month, and it's a one-bedroom flat, and I take home about £1,350. I've got an ex-wife that I pay 25% to my 25% of my net income to.
Gosh.
And if it wasn't for the fact that I live with my wife, my now wife, should I say, I would be living on the streets.
Yeah, well, Jez, that is pretty tough. That is pretty tough. That is pretty tough. I'm not jealous.
And I'm paid much more than the living wage. I'm paid much more than this £7.20 living wage that you're supposed to be able to buy an affordable £400,000 home with.
Yeah, and that's Ashford. You're Ashford Kent or Ashford Middlesex?
Middlesex.
Middlesex, yeah. So you're part of Greater London, and you're finding rents just mean that life is just virtually impossible, unless you earn quite a lot of money. Yeah, I know.
I can't save any money, yeah.
No.
Can I ask you one more thing?
Go on, far away.
Track. Okay, I used to work as a contractor. I worked in the Netherlands for quite a lot of years. Under the same regime or rule that the guys from everywhere else are coming over here. However, I used to have to pay double taxation. I used to have to pay tax in the Netherlands and tax in the UK.
Yeah.
I used to also, and I wasn't earning an absolute fortune then either. I also had to present myself to the local police station, sign in. I also had to go to the town hall and sign in there. Why?
So this was sort of like Auf Wiedersehen Pet, was it really?
Yes. It was exactly like that. Yes, exactly like that. It was brilliant. I loved it.
Yeah. Look, I think, Jen, it's a separate issue. But look, we want people to move and work across Europe, and then to be able to do it here. We just can't do it on a completely unconditional basis. But listen, thank you for your call. And we're now going to Portugal. We're going to Manuel in Portugal, who has a view on whether MPs should have a degree of protection or not. Manuel, good evening.
Good evening, Nigel. It's such a pleasure to talk to you for the first time. I haven't been in England, but I would like to be in one of your rallies because I think you are something that England should never lose as an asset, because you are a real asset to UK. However, a lot of people try to shut you up. But regarding MPs, Nigel,
yes.
I think they shouldn't have no special treatment in relation to any citizen. However, I know I'm going off the subject, if I may, towards MPs as well and politicians. When you mentioned the raise on salaries and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I quite agree that politicians with value, such as yourself, they should have what you call a decent salary in order not to fall into in corruption and all other things more attractive than a lower salary. However, I would think that you'd have to change most of the political class. Because apart from being anti-patriotic, they are mediocre.
They're very mediocre, and your politicians, Manuel, in Portugal have been even more mediocre than ours, because what they've done is they've signed you up to a currency that has best part ruined the country, and I love Portugal, and it's tragic to see what the euro has done to Portugal, what it's done for the prospects of young people, even those with good qualifications, finding it really, really tough to get on the ladder. I would just make this point to you. I do get your point. The politicians should be reasonably paid. If they're reasonably paid, then maybe they'd be a bit less corrupt. I'm not actually sure that human nature works like that. Sometimes the more you pay people, the greedier they get and the more corrupt they get and even more they want. But no, I would agree with you. Fair pay for politicians, I think, is reasonable for all of us. It's just that when our politicians have given away, the sovereignty of our own parliament, I wonder whether they deserve to be paid what they currently are. Thank you. And we go on to Charlie in Kingston upon Thames.
Mr. Nigel, how are you doing?
Hello there. Good, thanks.
Good. Just firstly, I'd like to just make a point. I'm a 19-year-old lad in employment, and the sort of the support you've got amongst the young people of certainly my constituency.
Okay.
Is great.
Yeah.
Secondly, MPs, I think they get a relatively reasonable pay. Similar to that of a director sort of level of a small and medium sized enterprise, of which I work for.
Yeah.
And the only other problem is that certainly in my constituency and others sort of around Kingston, you don't even know the name of the MP, which at times is pretty sort of shoddy. You ask most people and they don't even know who their local MP is. So
I'm afraid the characters, Charlie, in politics have gone. When I was your age, I basically knew the names of all the front bench, and I had done with the previous Labour government before, and it seemed that politics was full of giant figures and big personalities and people who'd done stuff before they were in politics, and it's been replaced, I'm afraid, with a relatively bland bunch of people. Not everybody, there's still some characters, but not as many as there ought to be. Look, thank you. OK, we've had an hour talking about members of Parliament, talking about this new law they passed this week, giving themselves, in theory, anonymity from getting in the press until they're charged as opposed to just being arrested. It was interesting. There were one or two people who rang up who really absolutely hate members of Parliament and hold them in total contempt. And I do get that. But actually, the fair-minded listeners of LBC think that whether you're Cliff Richard or a member of Parliament or Joe Bloggs, you should actually be treated fairly, not be exposed for something that you've not been convicted of or at least charged of. But I'm afraid in the age of the internet, all that proves impossible, and famous people will always get everything exposed. We're over to the news now, and after the hour, the financial crash.
On FM, online, on your mobile, and on digital radio. Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 8 o'clock, murderer Levi Belfield is now denying that he confessed to abducting and killing schoolgirl Millie Dowler. The 47-year-old serving a whole life prison sentence after being convicted in 2011 of murdering the teenager. His solicitor has told Surrey Police that covert recordings were made during a prison interview and has demanded access to the tape. Former detective Colin Sutton led efforts to catch Belfield. He says he thinks it's an attempt to hurt Millie's family once again.
The letter is, as you might expect, carefully worded and doesn't actually say he didn't do it. He's denying the fact that he made a confession. We must all hope that there is some unassailable record of him, in fact, making that confession, and we'll see this for what it is, which is just another attempt at twisting things and cruelty on the family.
Surrey Police says it stands by its original statement. 6 children aged between 11 and 13 have been injured after they were hit by a car in Liverpool outside a school. The ambulance service says 2 of the victims were seriously hurt. It's understood the driver was a woman in her 80s. Rolf Harris has been charged with 7 new counts of indecent assault against women as young as 12. The 85-year-old, who is currently in prison for sex offences, will appear in court next month. Syrian President Bashar al-Assad has vowed to retake control of the entire country, and he's rejecting the UN's claims that he's committed war crimes. Meanwhile, the US government says it wants to see proof that Russia's serious about supporting a ceasefire in Syria that was negotiated only yesterday. Our US correspondent Simon Marks reports.
Bashar al-Assad's comments have only served to underscore scepticism here about the prospects for the ceasefire. State Department spokesman Mark Toner conceded it's possible the Russians won't honour it when it's due to come into force in a week's time.
We need to see that through their actions whether they actually have bought into this process.
Russia's involvement in Syria has boosted Bashar al-Assad to the point where he can even suggest that one day he might control the whole country again. Simon Marks, LBC, Washington.
A 22-year-old medical student has pleaded guilty to plotting an Islamic State group-style terror attack in London. Tariq Hussain from West London is on trial at the Old Bailey. 3 other men deny the charges against them. Drugs company GlaxoSmithKline says it's considering an appeal after being fined £38 million for paying other companies not to make a rival antidepressant. Competition authorities say it meant the NHS paid over the odds for the drug. LBC weather mostly dry and clear tonight, lows of 1 degree. Tomorrow cold and cloudy with patchy rain, highs of 5 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Ros Unwin.
This is LBC, leading Britain's conversation with Nigel Farage. Call 0345 6060 973. Tweet at LBC. Text 84850. Nigel Farage on LBC.
In the next hour, we talk about the fact that every day we see headlines, billions being wiped off the stock markets. What does it all mean for my endowment mortgage that's maturing in May? Am I in trouble? And then from 9 o'clock, we're going to talk about Europe, as David Cameron gives a speech in Hamburg before his boss, his European partner, Angela Merkel. We discuss the great Europe debate, which I saw on Question Time last night, is hotting up in a big, big way. I'm not sure whether you've made your mind up, but by the end of that hour, maybe you will. So some of the news looks a bit grim, doesn't it? The FTSE 100 is down about 11% so far this year. I see the Japanese stock market, I think, has bombed out by about 21% this year. The stock markets are on 4-year lows. Gilts, which are government bonds, government debt, I understand are running at about 350-year lows. If you want to invest money in government bonds, lend the government some money, that over the next 10 years it's paying you just barely over 1% per annum. And the other thing that's happened this week is gold has spiked up by about $50 an ounce. So something is going on out there. And I see these headlines, billions wiped off the stock market, and think maybe it doesn't matter. But somehow I fear something rather more momentous might just be around the corner. Whether it's going to be like 2008 or not, I don't know. But to help us with this is the voice of the City of London. He is David Buick, the market commentator for Panmure Gordon. David, tell us, just how serious is this?
Greetings, Nigel. Lovely to talk to you. I'm not a prophet of doom. I think the teenage scribblers have been at their best during the course of the last fortnight, and they haven't helped matters at all. And also, dealing with something which probably people will think is the least important, is that the way markets are traded now, which are completely different from when you and I did it 20-odd years ago, is that 40% of trading now is done what they call by program trading, algorithms, dark pools, and all these sort of things. In other words, it's on a screen base. It is decided by mathematicians who know as much about equities as you and I know about non-ferrous welding. And they put, well, it's true, and you know that. Yeah. And they put these numbers in the machine, and when a share price reaches that level, it's either bought or sold. So the damage that is being done and blamed on people like hedge funds and fund managers and banks like that, it is actually dramatically exacerbated by this stream-based trading, which I am profoundly against if it's not properly monitored. I'm not against progress. I don't want the quill pen to come back. But what I do want is that if these huge deals are going through, the regulators and the authorities know exactly what's being done. Now, outside of that, we can go and bore ourselves to death, about why China's growth and why oil prices have come down and the politics behind it, and we can go cover all those things and global growth falling. But the things that you alluded to in your introduction, which I think is really important, and something that you and I are entirely on the same hymn sheet at, is debt.
Yeah.
Debt is the entry to, in my opinion, ignominy and complete disaster. Whether it's governments, whether it's corporations, whether it's the individual. It has got completely out of hand. We've been lulled into a sense of false security because we've had no interest rate structure now for the best part of 6 years right across the world. In fact, it's negative in a lot of places. We've had, if I may use the expression, a pretty poor steers from the central banks whose forward guidance, starting with the United States of America, but going through, whether it's the ECB, the Bank of Japan, even the Bank of England, their forecasting of what the world's economy is like has been at best dire. And finally, inflation. Well, we haven't had any, and that's our problem. And inflation is necessary and a good thing in order to create margins and profitability. And when you haven't had any for the best part of 3 years, it's not surprising that profit margins are under pressure, and therefore analysts look at the stock market and say, we can't justify 15, 16, 18 times earnings, and the market gets sold off. Now, I haven't probably given a very good dissertation
No,
about it,
I mean,
you've got a rough thing. Anyway, would you want to throw something in there?
Yeah, I mean, David, I understand that these new trading systems maybe lead to, excessive market volatility. Hence, as I said in my introduction, we see these stories, billions wiped off the stock market, billions gained on the stock market. I mean, so what, frankly, on a day-to-day basis? But the debt thing does bother me. I mean, I tried like crazy in the general election of last year to try and point out that actually we'd lived through no austerity whatsoever, that actually our national debt, when David Cameron became Prime Minister in 2010, was about 700 billion, and by the time he finished that 5 years, it was nearer 1.5 trillion. That household debt last year, non-mortgage household debt was up about 35%. I mean, we're just building up debt, and yet it's very difficult to have an intelligent conversation about it. If the 2008, problem with the banks and everything else was caused because of excessive borrowing, and much of it, very bad borrow, very bad lending, do we face a potential problem with some of the European banks?
I can't say no, but what I can say to you is that, let's take the case of Deutsche Bank, where we saw unbelievable gyrations. I mean, it's in the period of the last 3 months, it's lost 41% in value. And I think the swing last week was 24%, 14% down, and then 10% up during the course of the week. The fact remains is that whether we are in agreement with the regulators or the authorities, they have made life incredibly tough for banks, correctly so, since the crisis of 2008. And to do the same level of business that the banks did in 2008, they require dramatically more capital, which is correct. So I don't actually believe for 1 minute that the ECB or the German regulator hasn't been on top of exactly what Deutsche Bank's been doing.
Right.
What he probably knows is that everybody in the whole market knew that Deutsche Bank's exposure in investment banking products, i.e. slightly risky things, such as whether it's credit default swaps, interest rate swaps, things of that nature, Deutsche Bank's exposure was far greater. Well, that is coming down because it has to. They're also going to sell Deutsche Postbank, and they will get their act together. And I believe in the United States, whether it's Paul Volcker or any of the other regulators that have got in, and the same definitely here with Andrew Bailey at the Bank of England, who is actually going over to run the FCA, the requirements for the banks now are draconian in comparison. Hence, the share prices, and in case your listeners didn't know, the share prices of all the clearing banks in this country, plus Standard Chartered, was lower yesterday than it was at its worst December 2008 to March 2009.
Yeah, no, it is.
And
really,
that tells you something.
Yeah, it is really bombed out. I have to say, David, it looks, I think to most people, people who've got a little bit of money that they want to invest or they're saving for a pension, the world looks pretty scary out there. And I'm just going to ask you, just to finish off this piece, and thank you for coming on and talking about what's going on in these markets. So where do we put our money, David? Do we put it under the mattress if we're going to have negative interest rates? Do we buy gold and hoard it? Or do we think everything's going to be okay if we stick in the stock market?
What goes round comes round, and if I knew exactly what was going to happen, Nigel, I'd be an extremely rich person. All I can say is that if you put all your eggs in one basket, it's probably folly. And you need a balance of between very selected, very, very, how can I put it, conservative companies that are going to pay you handsome dividends, whatever happens and whatever it requires, and a little bit of bonds, at the very short end of the market, because if you want to put all your money in property, that isn't liquid. And if anything ever happened to your family or anything else, you can't necessarily get rid of it absolutely immediately. Have a balanced portfolio. don't get ambitious, or if you're going to be ambitious, put a very small percentage of it in what I call spivving for the spivs and vagabonds. We all love it, but it does come unstuck horribly.
David, thank you very much indeed. You're a voice of calm amid all of these crazy newspaper headlines, and I wish you a very good evening and hope to see you soon. Thank you very much. Well, that was David Buick, who has worked in the city for many, many years, and he's relatively sanguine about where we are. It doesn't actually necessarily mean that he's right. What he is right to say is that we should all spread our risk. But the trouble is, my 25-year mortgage, as I say, it comes up for maturity at the end of May, and they keep sending me red letters. For the minute, I keep putting them in the bin. But I suspect I may have a little bit of a problem. And I just wonder, you know, amongst you, the LBC listeners, I mean, how concerned are you about a looming financial crisis? Do you worry about your kids ever being able to buy a house in London? And what about your own household debt? You know, are you having to build up debt just to survive in this, well, they call it this wonderful, modern, international city called London? And my guess is, if you're earning a good salary, London is a fantastic place to live. But if you're not earning a good salary, London is a very, very tough place to live. I have to say, I'm a bit more pessimistic than David Buick, and I did work in the commodities business before getting involved in politics, but I look right around the world, and I think we're seeing collapses of commodity prices like oil. I'm not sure what Alex Salmond thinks about that when he told us that Scotland could be independent with oil at $113 a barrel, and now it's under 30. But we've seen stock markets down, and we're actually seeing money now being devalued. Countries in Scandinavia, in Japan, in Switzerland, where actually you put your money in the bank, and rather than gaining interest, you have to pay the bank to keep your money. So I sense that we didn't actually solve the problems after that crash back in 2008, that all the problems are still there, that governments are borrowing, companies are borrowing, individuals are borrowing, and I just think we're not headed for a good place. What to do with your money, I'm not sure. Maybe we should all buy a little bit of gold. That, I think, is the recommendation that I'm going to have for people, but maybe somebody is going to ring in the course of the next 45 minutes and solve all of our problems. So we move to the break, but after that, I want to hear from you. I want somebody to come on. I want a guru to come on LBC and tell us how we can all financially be saved.
From the LBC Travel Centre, good evening, I'm Andy Lake. Not looking good on the M25 at all, I'm afraid. It's queuing because of an accident clockwise from the M11 to Waltham Abbey. One lane's been closed, so it's still looking busy tonight. There are long queues in both directions between junction 12 for the M3 and 14 for Heathrow Terminal 4. Solid queues all along that stretch. The M4's queuing coming out of London tonight. That's from Brentford towards the Hammersmith flyover, all after a car broke down earlier. And Buckingham Palace Road has one lane closed for emergency repairs to a burst water main. Still looking a little busy all around Hyde Park Corner because of this. Keeping London moving. More live travel updates at lbc.co.uk.
LBC.
Every week, thousands of people sell with WeBuyAnyCar.com. Whether it's a Fiesta or a Ferrari, a Mini or a Merc, a Beamer or something else beginning with B, a big bright blue Bentley. WeBuyAnyCar.com makes selling any car simple, fast and hassle-free. Probably why it's called WeBuyAnyCar.com. Change the way you sell your car. Enter your reg number now at WeBuyAnyCar.com. Terms and conditions apply. See WeBuyAnyCar.com/info.
Sitting at a desk for long hours in the wrong type of chair can be very hard on your back. But how do you choose the office chair that's right for you? Back2 is the answer. We offer a wide range of office chairs, sit-stand desks, and professional no-obligation advice. Too busy? No problem. We'll carry out a workstation assessment in your office. Back2, open every day in Wigmore Street and online at back2.co.uk. Get back to business with Back2, the office chair experts.
Galliard Homes, London's regeneration specialists. Shoreditch apartments from £695,000. The first 100 buyers receive a 3-year rent guarantee at 4% net and free letting and management. Releasing 5 p.m. March the 17th. Call 0203 770 6300 or visit thestageshoreditch.com.
Sign up for a free 14-day trial with UK Cloud Drive and get 1 terabyte of cloud storage backed up to data centers in the UK and EU. Military-grade encryption, easy recovery of deleted or corrupt files, and remote tracking for lost or stolen devices. Sign up at ukclouddrive.co.uk.
Cancel before trial ends to avoid charges.
When you need expert help and advice on issues affecting your business, the NFU, we're here for you.
You're looking forward to your night out, seeing friends, enjoying good food and drink, but your uncomfortable loose dentures always hold you back. If your teeth are affecting your confidence, Darwood & Tanner can help, even in the most challenging of circumstances. They use advanced treatments and technology to provide the most successful solutions for restoring your smile. Speak to your dentist about dental implants or call Darwood & Tanner on 08448 112 926 to see how they can help.
At Homebase, there's 20% off all Karcher pressure washers, like our Karcher K4 Compact Pressure Washer. Was $149.99, now only $119.99. Homebase.
An amazing kitchen, an amazing bathroom, an amazing hallway. At Amazing Tiles, our range of porcelain, ceramic and bespoke tiles can make any home amazing. Right now, buy 5 metres or more of plain tiles and get a third off the retail price. Visit our showroom and warehouse at Park Royal Road, London, or call 0208 83 84 900. Make your home amazing at amazingtiles.com.
On paper, they're an odd couple.
You feel you've got more influence here doing 2 hours on LBC than you had in the Tory government.
Well, not necessarily as in the government, but certainly as an obscure backbencher.
On air, they're the perfect match.
You were never obscure, my dear.
No, but there were times when I wish I had been obscure.
Discussing the week's biggest stories with the biggest political names. Ken Livingstone and David Mellor. Saturday mornings from 10 on LBC.
Welcome back with me, Nigel Farage. And before the break, we heard from David Buick, the voice of the City of London, the markets commentator for Panmure Gordon, telling us that these ridiculous new trading systems give us wild volatility in the markets. And perhaps, we get a bit depressed by some of the headlines and maybe it isn't that bad. But the truth is, you can't get much interest on your money. Stocks and shares have gone down. And actually, for people living in London, the standard of living is not great. And I think, actually, it isn't just London. I think right across the country, people on average salaries have actually found life is pretty damn tough in the last 10 years or so. We have a caller with a view to give us, and it's Kieran in Hull. Good evening.
Good evening. How are you doing?
Fine, thank you.
Yeah?
Yeah, come on. What have you got for me, Kieran?
Sorry. I'd like to ask you if you agree with me that illegal immigration is the biggest contributor to the looming financial crisis. I'm a medical student, and almost every week I see the situation that the NHS is in that it's being drained by these people who haven't paid a penny into the system, and yet are milking it dry. And essentially what that means is that that's all that money, that's millions and millions of pounds that are being taken out of the British economy and essentially being given to foreigners. And that's going on up and down the map.
Well, Kieran, hang on a second. I mean, look, I raised this issue at the last general election. I raised the issue that the National Health Service shouldn't be the International Health Service, but with the best will in the world, with the best will in the world, yes, we are. We are having our system used. The National Health Service is open to 500 million people, potentially from across Europe, who can come. But the estimates on how much this is costing us is about £2 billion a year. And though it's a problem, I can't agree with you that it's the biggest problem that we're facing.
No, I wouldn't say it's the biggest problem. I think that the collapse of the NHS is just one of the symptoms of the illegal, not even illegal immigration. Legal immigration is putting such a burden on the economy, housing, benefits.
Yeah. I mean, there I do think you've got a point. I think that legal immigration has fundamentally changed the living standards for many, many people, because what it's led to is wage compression, and what a population that rises by 500,000 a year leads to is house prices being more expensive. And I do get that. I do understand that. I do understand that. But we're living in a, Kieran, we're living in a world with people's wages effectively stagnant, and yet their housing costs going up, and life is very, very tough. Now, you're a medical student, you say?
Yes, I am.
So should we sympathise with the junior doctors?
Yes, I mean that's a slightly different issue.
I know it is. I'm just asking you just for a knee jerk. I mean, should I take to the barricades in their defence?
Well, I obviously agree with the junior doctors in terms of their kind of basic thing, but a part of me feels sorry for the government in terms of the position that they've been put in. The NHS is collapsing, and there's absolutely nothing that they can do. And the reason why it's collapsing is because of the fact, as you said, it's essentially an international health service. If this money was being spent on the British people and improving the health of the British people, then everything would be okay. Yeah. Instead, it's being given to Nigerians who.
Well, let's not get too. If we get too into detail, we'll get slagged off by the world. But Kieran, you've made your point. You've made it extremely well. Can I go on to John from the West Midlands? John, good evening.
Hello, Nigel.
Hi.
Yeah, just to say, you were asking before about the sort of the economic potential problems that we're facing, and of course it is the same one that we faced before. It was a debt crisis.
Yes.
I would say, and the thing is, there's definitely a housing bubble. I'm in the housing business. I'm an investor, and you know, when people put notes through your door saying, "I will buy this house for cash if you want to sell it." You know that there's a storm brewing if people are buying at the very. You know, it's like in the markets, people buy at the very top.
Yes. Was it in the Wall Street crash that the lift boys were giving people tips for stocks, and that was the sign the market had reached the top.
So I'm actually selling one or two of my properties in order to pay down my mortgage at home.
Right.
In order so that I'm not so exposed, kind of debt-wise, when the next bubble bursts, which is going to happen at some point. Now, of course, the housing bubble is fueled by, the thing is, there's a lot to be said for immigration, balanced and sort of moderate immigration. They do bring a lot of benefits to the country. However, unsustainable levels, we can't deal with that because, of course, they don't bring their houses with them.
No, I know. I mean, John, you're a property investor who thinks the market's toppy. And I get that, and I think there are parts of the London housing market that, from what I can make out, have now gone stagnant. Yeah. But, John, what would your advice be to sort of somebody who's 25 to 35 years old, they've got a good job, they're working somewhere in the country, they haven't got parents who've got big cash to give them for deposits. I could even be thinking about my own offspring, couldn't I, in this context. And, when their parents and grandparents have been able to get onto the property ladder, and when it was perhaps a reasonable aspiration that they had when they were at school or university. I mean, what would you say to those people? Would you say wait because there's a market crash coming?
Well, I'm not sure that I'd say that, because again, if there's a crash, you don't know where it's going to come from. That's the problem, and you don't know what's going to cause it. Now, it could be a major flood of extra migrants coming from anywhere in the world, you name it, hitting the European shores and breaking up the sort of Schengen agreement, etc., etc. And, of course, we will probably vote to get out of the EU, which will throw all sorts of things.
Well, John, I do hope so.
Well, I know it's your pet subject. I agree with you.
No.
I have to say, but we also know that that's going to throw a lot of things up in the air. Hopefully they'll all come back down again and in the right order, and we'll be fine. However, that might take 2 or 3 years.
John, thank you very much. Very interesting phone call. We go to Charlie in East Grinstead. Charlie, good evening.
Hi, Nigel. I just wanted to ask, do you agree that to get the economy moving again, we need Thatcher-style privatisation and tax cuts?
Well, there isn't much left to privatise, Charlie, is there? We've actually sold almost everything off, so I don't think privatisation is necessarily the answer to everything. And I wonder in some cases whether we haven't perhaps got a privatisation too far. Now, as far as getting the economy moving, I've always been a great believer that if you cut people's taxes, they actually go out and spend it. But I also think we have to address the problem of debt. I tried, Charlie, in the general election to get people to talk honestly about the fact that the national debt had doubled in 5 years of the last government. And yet I was surrounded by people like the Green Party or the Labour Party who said this government have cut terribly, and isn't it wicked and awful, and aren't they evil? No, they haven't cut. They've just doubled the national debt that we've been accumulating since we fought, Napoleon. So having an honest conversation about this is very, very difficult. The one thing we can say is that in the latter part of the Thatcher years, we actually were paying back national debt every year and not adding to national debt. But we've either got to create a vast amount of wealth through deregulation and tax cuts, and we've got to start cutting some of the excesses, perhaps the foreign aid budget and one or two things like that. But, I mean, I promise you something, Charlie, this will not happen quickly. I'm going to take one more call on this subject. I'm going to go to John in Bury. John, good evening.
Good evening, Nigel. Can I start off by saying, and echo some of the other callers, and just thank you for all the work you've done for the country and the personal sacrifice that you've made as well.
Well, thank you.
It's something that needs to be applauded. Now, the country's got too much debt. We can't afford the interest payments on the debt if it gets too much higher. We certainly can't afford the interest payments if the bond markets go up and want to charge us more interest. So I see interest rates being artificially low for quite a while. Do you agree?
Yes, and I think when the 10-year government bond is yielding just sort of 1.1%, that tells you that. The thing that scares me a bit more, John, than that is maybe we're going into negative interest rates, which we're seeing in Japan and elsewhere. One thing's for certain, we're not going to get out of any of this particularly quickly, but thank you. Now, look, everybody, I know that when I said we would be talking about the European question and whether you'd made your minds up, that many of you are sitting there waiting to get involved. Because what I saw last night, internetly, with that Question Time audience, and I watched on my television the week before from Bradford, is suddenly the heat is building up in this debate. People are beginning to make their minds up. People are switching. They're deciding it's time that actually we really ought to leave, or perhaps some are thinking we really ought to stay. Either way, with Turkey, the migrant crisis, with perhaps the threat of the euro crisis coming back, with David Cameron appearing now to be at war with some of his backbenchers and hundreds of his councillors, right across the country. I think this issue isn't going to go away. This time next week, Cameron will have come back from the European summit. This time next week, we will know what the final shape of the deal is going to be. So as you're so desperate all to talk about the EU, we're going to do it. David Cameron's about to go on the stage in Hamburg. Right now, we're going to head off for the 8:30 latest headlines with Ros Unwin, back after the break.
Murderer Levi Belfield has reportedly denied that he confessed to abducting and killing schoolgirl Millie Dowler, the 47-year-old serving a whole life jail sentence for murdering the teenager. A total of 8 girls have been injured following a crash outside a school in Liverpool. One 13-year-old suffered 2 broken arms in the collision, which involved a car. Rolf Harris has been charged with 7 counts of indecent assault against women and girls as young as 12. The alleged offences date from 1971 to 2004. LBC weather mostly dry and clear tonight, lows of 1 degree. Tomorrow cold and cloudy with patchy rain, highs of 5 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Ros Unwin.
This is LBC, London.
Picture a range of colours in front of you. Now place them in order from darkest to lightest. Simple, right? What if they were all similar colours? In fact, what if they were 200 subtle shades of the same colour? And that colour was white. At Lexus, our Takumi master craftsmen put paint technicians through this test, ensuring the highest standards of craftsmanship down to every last stroke. Come and experience the amazing craftsmanship in the new Lexus CT Sport and Lexus IS Sport.
Now with 0% APR when financed over 2 years until the end of March. 0% APR representative available on the new Lexus CT Sport and Lexus IS Sport when flexibly financed through Lexus Connect. Terms and conditions apply. Finance subject to status to over 18s. Indemnities may be required.
In some fabric shops, you order from a sample book and then wait. But not at the Curtain Factory Outlet. With thousands of rolls of designer name curtain and upholstery fabric in stock, you see it, you love it, it's yours to either take away or leave with our skilled curtain makers. Thousands of people have already found the perfect designer fabric for less, and you can too at the Curtain Factory Outlet. Visit our warehouse, open 7 days a week at 269 Ballards Lane, North Finchley, or click curtainfactoryoutlets.co.uk.
At Homebase, there's 20% off all Karcher pressure washers, like our Karcher K4 compact pressure washer. Was $149.99, now only $119.99. Homebase.
Match, Malcher, workplace chair, pension, pop.
Sound a bit alien? Well, he's saying it's time for small businesses to set up a workplace pension. Still sound alien? Don't worry, the People's Pension can help. We're an award-winning scheme run by a provider with 30 years pensions experience. Our complete solution gives small businesses total support. Join the thousands of businesses already signed up at the People's Pension/Alien. The People's Pension's a workplace pension scheme regulated by the Pensions Regulator. The People's Pension, designed for people, not aliens.
A yes can mean a lot of things. Like sharing your life with the person you want to, not the people you have to. A yes can mean a dog, a cat, or even several of each. A yes can mean the start of a family and pencil marks on the wall as your children grow. It can mean, I love it here. I never want to leave. At NatWest, we understand that a mortgage means a home, which is why we say yes to a mortgage every minute. So what would a yes mean to you? Search NatWest Mortgages. Based on mortgage offers made January to November 2015, 9 to 5 over a 5-day working week.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC.
These new contracts on junior doctors, when you consider that for many people in this country, the National Health Service is the closest thing they have to a religion, you've got to hope, for Mr. Hunt's sake and all his colleagues, he's got this right.
We have detected gravitational waves. We did it.
James in Clapham's phone through. Says here it's very simple. What have we learned from yesterday?
There is a force that if we could utilise, we could actually travel quicker. We could actually be there before we leave. You know.
Whoa, slow down, sweet child of mine. I can be somewhere before I left.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Every weekday morning from 7. Only on LBC.
You sure those measurements are right?
Yes, I've checked them 100 times. It's 12 months public liability cover for the price of 10 with AXA.
Really?
Really. For a limited time only, get 12 months cover for the price of 10 with AXA. And you can tailor your cover to suit, so you only pay for what you need. To find out more, search AXA Trade. AXA, business insurance that measures up.
Mean a lot.
Underwritten by AXA Insurance UK plc, applicable to new business insurance customers and their first year only. Offer available for a limited time. Terms and conditions apply.
Day 1, Venice. The welcome on board is as warm as the weather. Today we begin our Mediterranean family adventure. Day 3, we sail into the majestic Bay of Kotor. Montenegro lays before us. If only I could spell it. Day 6, in Monte Carlo, played roulette with a Russian, but he didn't get the joke.
To fly direct from one of 11 regional airports, book at POCruises.com or your travel agent. 7-night cruise holidays start from just $549 per person. P&O Cruises.
This is the life.
At or protected, E606A PF grade, saver fare, selected dates, limited availability, conditions and credit card fees apply.
Wearing glasses can be a bother. Hiding your face, fogging up with every hot cuppa, growing legs and walking away from where you left them only moments ago. Could you see life without them? Find out from the eye care specialists trusted by thousands of patients. Talk to Optegra Eye Health Care to learn whether lens replacement or laser eye surgery could help you say goodbye to your glasses. Book your free consultation now at optegra.com. University fees. Broken washing machine. Parking fine. Like families, businesses need to be prepared for unexpected costs. That's why our Renault van range is now available with 4 years 0% APR, 4 years servicing, 4 years warranty, and 4 years roadside assistance. Renault vans. Business users only. Deposit payable. Renault Finance hire purchase. Available until March 31st. Participating dealers only. Subject to status. Conditions apply. See Renault.co.uk/offers.
A yes can mean a lot of things. Like sharing your life with the person you want to, not the people you have to. A yes can mean a dog, a cat, or even several of each. A yes can mean the start of a family and pencil marks on the wall as your children grow. It can mean, I love it here. I never want to leave. At NatWest, we understand that a mortgage means a home, which is why we say yes to a mortgage every minute. So what would a yes mean to you? Search NatWest Mortgages. Based on mortgage offers made January to November 2015, 9 to 5 over a 5-day working week.
This is LBC with Nigel Farage.
So, those of us that were concerned about Britain's membership of the European Union used to be called cranks, gadflies, eccentrics. We were called fruitcakes. We were called swivel-eyed loons. And when David Cameron became leader of the Conservative Party, he said, we must not bang on about Europe. But bang on about Europe I did, and UKIP did, and we gradually went from being a tiddly little political party to being really rather bigger. And as we got bigger, suddenly we were dangerous extremists. We threatened the stability of the nation. We would perhaps, if UKIP got its way and we left the EU, we'd all finish up living in caves and the sun wouldn't rise the next morning. But ultimately, and I'm going to claim this, that it was UKIP's pressure that made Mr Cameron promise a referendum, and promise a referendum he did if he got a majority at the general election. Well, he got it. And his job now has been to go and get us the best possible deal for Britain. And thus far, we've got a grubby little piece of paper from Donald Tusk, the President of the European Council, which allows us, if we're very, very good, to reduce migrant benefits for a period of up to 4 years. Do you think the Prime Minister has got a good deal or a bad deal? And what's he about to say in Hamburg in front of a German audience? Are you convinced about the British deal? Do you think that controlling our borders is the issue of this referendum? Is it about democracy? Do you think we're going to be safer if we stay inside the European Union? Either way, as I said, I was on Question Time last night. I sense the temperature of this debate is hotting up. I'm happy to do battle or to listen to any of you, and I'm particularly keen to hear people whose perhaps mind has changed over the course of the last few weeks. So we will pile straight in, and we'll go to David in Bracknell. Good evening.
Oh, good evening, Nigel. I've been trying to speak to you for some time, actually, on LBC. Anyway, I'm interested to know your views on the European social-funded government's work programme, which is a success rate of just 2.6%.
Is it as good as that?
Individuals participating in it.
I'm really surprised it's been that successful. Look,
2.6 per 100 people participating.
Yeah, well, look, David, these are all high-minded intentions. The idea, to me, that you can set, social policy or, frankly, even economic policy in Brussels or Frankfurt that will apply to 28 different nations with entirely different peoples, with completely different economies, frankly, I think is ridiculous. And just the building of that whole bureaucracy, the sheer cost of the whole thing. David, we put in £55 million a day as a membership fee. Yeah, sure, we get some money back. But even net, we put in £34 million a day. And for that, we could build a new district hospital every single week. And for me, that's a better way to spend our money.
Absolutely. But the guys get the impression that this government has completely washed their hands of any responsibility of trying to train our young people up to do anything. They've just turned it all over to the European Union. We seem to think that the best thing to do is to have cheap imported foreign labour, whether it's in the health service or elsewhere. Train our own people to do anything.
I couldn't agree more. I think we're studying far too many ologies at university.
I could tell you all about all the fraud that's going on as well, but I'm not allowed to do that, apparently.
Oh, well, there we are. David, you've made your point. You've made it well, and I sense you're on our side in this referendum, but I guess you were right from the very start. Thank you. We go to Tony in Enfield. Tony, good evening.
Hello, Nigel. First time we've spoken. I can't wait for you to get into my London licensed cab and you'll get out with steam coming out your ears.
Right.
I'm British European.
Are you?
Yes, we've built a tunnel to marry up to France. We're like children. We've joined a club. No, we don't like the rules. There's so many benefits in these European countries that we should be envious of. First of all, many of the governments, maybe not the poorer countries in Europe, they support their trade union movements for their working people. This government here, what do? They're anti the trade union. They're anti-trade union. So I believe we should embrace Europe. Remember the royals that live in that big council house at the end of the Mall there? They've never paid a penny rent. They've got a German background, and we've got 2.2 million people working within the European Union.
Oh, no, we haven't. Oh, no, we haven't.
27,000 British companies operate within the European Union. We'll be marginalised. We'll be ridiculed if we leave the European Union. We are Europe. England is Europe.
No, never. Tony, look, come on. You keep using the word Europe. Are you doing that deliberately to wind me up? If you are, it's working, and it's working extremely well. We are not talking about Europe. We're talking about the European Union. We're talking about a referendum in which we're being asked whether we stay in a political union or not. And my argument to you is we can be European without being part of the European Union. We can trade with Europe, we can cooperate with Europe, we can be friendly with Europe. But let me throw it back at you. You call yourself a British European. So
Yes.
do you like the European Union flag?
Yes, it's rather nice, because our flag, it's been described as a terrorist flag, isn't it? All the invasions and pillaging.
Oh, dear, dear, dear. Now, basically...
You know, there's some negatives on our flag, but, you know, I'm proud to be British as far as it goes. I'd never put the word great in front of Britain. It's Britain, not Great Britain.
And what about the European anthem, Tony? Do you stand ramrod straight when you hear the European anthem?
No, I sit down and light up a Havana cigar, the Cuban cigar.
Well, in that at least.
I can't listen to that. But let me.
That at least, Tony, we're at one, you know. But I mean, you know, this point about identity actually is crucial, because what is really interesting is in Britain and right across Europe, virtually nobody pays allegiance to that flag or to that anthem. Virtually nobody in Europe wants us to be in something that becomes a state in its own right. Let's have a Europe of trade and cooperation, but let's make our own laws in our own country and choose our own global trading partners. And that, Tony, I think, is what most people want. And I don't know whether you do a survey of your passengers in your London cab and whether you've seen a shift or not, but I've got a feeling that we're heading pretty quickly in this referendum towards a majority saying we should come out.
Well, I'll tell you why I think you may be wrong. First of all, I don't think we qualify to vote on Europe. I don't know anyone who's read the Maastricht Treaty, including our MPs, and they want us to go out to vote to see whether we have a union partnership politically with our partners across the... I'd like to see the whole of Europe with no borders. This will happen maybe 100 years, 200 years' time. Wouldn't it be nice? One world, one people.
Oh, Tony! Oh, lovely! Isn't it marvellous? It's just like Marxism and communism, isn't it? You know, when they got rid of the Tsar and murdered the family, and because they, you know, felt contemptuous about monarchy and all the old articles of state, and they put in place communism, and it all sounded lovely, and they finished up in the end murdering 40 million of their own citizens, pursuing a dream that could never ever work. And the problem with this, the problem with this European dream, it's different to communism, but it's a utopian idea that does not recognise that the countries and peoples of Europe are completely different from each other. Tony, listen, that was fun. Thank you very much. I can tell that passions are beginning to heat up. Have you yet made your mind up on the EU? Call us on 0345 60 60 973. Tweet at LBC. Text 8485. Oh, and after the break, we'll be back, and perhaps it'll get even hotter.
From the LBC Travel Centre, good evening, I'm Andy Lake. The M25's queuing because of an accident. That's clockwise between Potters Bar and the A10 in Enfield. It's down to just 2 lanes along that stretch because of this. Anti-clockwise is looking slow as well towards Godstone tonight. 1 lane's closed because of a broken down lorry and an oil spillage. There's also been 1 lane closed at the Darrenth interchange all day for repair work to the barriers that took a knock in an accident last night. The North Circular still looks very slow towards Neasden. The usual roadworks delays have been worsened by an accident as well. And on the rails, South Eastern is suffering because of the bad weather, so do make sure you double check before you travel. Keeping London moving. More live travel updates at lbc.co.uk.
LBC. On paper, they're an odd couple.
You feel you've got more influence here doing 2 hours on LBC than you had in the Tory government?
Well, not necessarily when I was in the government, but certainly as an obscure backbencher.
On air, they're the perfect match.
You were never obscure, my dear.
No, but there were times when I wish I had been obscure.
Discussing the week's biggest stories with the biggest political names. Ken Livingstone and David Mellor. Saturday mornings from 10 on LBC.
We're back discussing the EU referendum as Mr. Cameron limbers up to speak in somewhere in North Germany. Hamburg, I think he is. Goodness knows what he's going to say after that attempted deal last week. Perhaps Philip in Walsall will tell us.
Well, I think, thank you very much, Nigel, for your sacrifice and your families.
Well, thank you.
And I fully appreciate what you're doing for the country. As for Dave and his pathetic deal, I see today on the internet that he's out with his begging bowl, and the first person to call on is Frau Merkel.
The boss.
Asking for some more crumbs from the EU table, which is, to me, is disgusting for a Prime Minister to go around begging everybody.
Philip, I could not agree with you more, and he will go to that summit next Thursday, and like Oliver Twist, he will walk up to Donald Tusk and Mr. Juncker, and he will hold out his bowl, and he'll say, "Please, sir, can I have some more concessions?" And is that what we've sunk to as a nation? And what they've given him thus far is 3/5 of 5/8 of almost nothing. It is, frankly, it's pitiful. I would love to hear.
I like the one in Jacob Rees-Mogg says, the thin gruel has got even thinner.
Yeah, quite absolutely. But Philip, no, I'm with you. I love it. But let's get a caller coming back and telling me that Dave, as he likes to call himself, has done a wonderful job. Philip, thank you for your call. We go to James in Southend-on-Sea.
Hello there, Nigel.
Hi.
Yeah, just a quick question. I was watching you on Question Time yesterday, and it seems that a lot of the heat around the EU debate seems to be based on controlled immigration.
Yes.
One of the things that I find is slipped under the rug quite a lot is the TTIP and the TTP, the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership that the EU is currently trying to negotiate with the US under secret. I was just wondering what your views would be about talking about the TTIP, because the way
James,
they want to...
James, let me just say this, that, you know, you've rung up knowing about TTIP. For most of the listeners right now, they will think that you just switched into Swahili because they'll have no idea what you're talking about. TTIP is the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership. It is a proposed deal between the European Union and the United States of America. I am for having trade deals and reducing barriers to trade, because it seems to me when you do that, people do more business, and the more business they do, the more profits generally there are, and the friendlier countries that do these things become. The problem with this TTIP deal is that frankly, it's been designed not just to get rid of tariffs and barriers, but designed for giant corporations, and potentially it may mean big American companies could be able to access and buy large chunks of the National Health Service. It's an issue, James, that has upset many of the trade union movement in this country, and it's perfectly fair and reasonable to talk about it, but I don't think that it's actually the central issue in this referendum, and I will put this to the audience, that there are three things I think that really matter and can shift people's votes either way. One is, and you were right to mention it, controlled immigration. Can we control immigration if we stay a member of the European Union, or do we have to leave to solve it? The second, which I've touched on tonight, is money. You know, what in goodness name are we doing, giving away tens of millions of pounds every single day? And why did Mr. Cameron not demand a lower contribution? And the third one is, should we be a self-governing nation? Do we have the self-confidence to run our own country, or do we, as a previous caller said, do we sort of think that we're really not good enough to do it on our own? And James, I sense that you're on my side on this.
Yes, well, the only reason I bring up the TTIP is because the leaked things that we've seen within the script is opening certain companies to private arbitrators, and it sort of resonates with what you say.
Yeah.
Europe doesn't believe that England is better, is bigger, is good enough to govern itself. So they'd rather have these private arbitrators for these private companies. And it's like you say, what's wrong with our Supreme Court's governing and holding our own corporations?
No, absolutely. This is. I mean, for me, this is about believing in Britain. And if you believe in Britain and you believe we're good enough, then we should run our own show. James, I thank you. We move to Thomas in Worthing in West Sussex.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'll tell you what I find most concerning about this whole thing. I'm a firm outer. I'm definitely voting out. But the thing I find really concerning is if there is an in-vote, what's stopping the EU from turning around and saying, look, one of the big three nations, i.e. Britain, Germany, France, they've all decided they want to stay in the EU. let's take this as a sign to put more legislation through, maybe even push for a brand new treaty where, say, for instance, Schengen is a requirement of all member states. There's absolutely nothing from stopping them from putting it forward as a green light to push for more control.
Yeah, I mean, Schengen, I think they're in very bit of trouble with this, and it looks like Greece, once again, is going to be the whipping boy. And Greece have effectively been given notice and told that they're going to be sort of left, sort of penned off from the rest of Europe and told to get on with the migrant crisis on their own. So Schengen's not a very good example, Thomas. But what is for certain is if we vote to remain, we're not voting to remain in the European Union as it is. We're voting to remain in something that evolves and moves on and changes with every single day. And with every single piece of legislation that gets passed, more power effectively has gone from Britain's Parliament and courts to those at a European level. And in the end, the question's going to be, are we safer being part of this political project, which, frankly, has got a disastrous currency, has got a migration crisis that is completely out of control, and is increasingly losing the respect of the peoples of Europe, north, south, east and west? Or are we safer and more secure, saying, do you know what, we should be in control of all of these things? And to me, it's the latter. And you're a firm outer, and you're with us already, and I thank you. But I'm going to go and try and convince Phil in Mayfair, who I'm told has a different point of view. Phil, good evening.
You certainly don't need to convince me about coming out of Europe.
OK, go on.
Right, two questions, really. If we were to come out of the Europe, how long would it take us and how much will it cost us, do you think?
What do you mean, if? What do you mean, if? What's all this negativity, Phil? You mean when? You mean when? When Dave comes...
when, sorry.
Yeah, when Dave comes back next week waving his piece of paper, telling us about this great victory he's had and telling us the referendum is going to be on June the 23rd. You heard it here first. Look, how long? There is a treaty agreement that we would enter into a negotiation that would last up to 2 years. It is not a perfect agreement. It is something that we were signed up to without the promised referendum. But whichever way you cut it, you know, it will take several months to negotiate a different kind of deal, perhaps a little bit longer. I'd love to say we could do it in 24 hours, but the reality is we do want to have you know, the best possible relations with our European neighbours and a sensible trade deal in place. What will it cost us? It will gain us. It will gain us, unless you believe, you know, Lord Rose and BSE. Fancy calling yourself BSE. Not a very good start, really, is it? Britain's stronger in Europe, and they tell us that we'd lose trade. You know, just Phil, you live in Mayfair.
I can't see that.
Phil, you live in Mayfair. You live in one of the richest places in Britain. Just have a look out.
Don't trust me. I don't. I'm actually a minicab driver.
Oh right, you just happen to.
It was just where I was at the time.
Oh, no, well, fair dues.
So yeah.
Fair dues, but you, Phil, as a cab driver, can tell me just how many German motor cars there are on Britain's roads. The trade figures this week showed that now the trade deficit with Europe is 80 billion a year. They need us more than we need them. We'll be better off outside the European Union. We won't pay their wretched contribution fees. We'll take back our fishing territorial waters. We better get rid of bad laws that have damaged us. We will, Phil, be better off out, all right? And go and tell...
I'm with you all the way with that. Now, one more question, Nigel. If you got in power, what would be one of the first things you would do? That's probably it's a bit of a difficult question, probably. What's one of the first things you would do?
One of the first things I would do, provided we were outside the European Union, you know, provided that bit had been done and we had back border controls, one of the first things I would do is to try and increase social mobility in this country. The gap between rich and poor is getting too big and growing by the day, and we would do that by bringing back the opportunity of grammar schools for kids who hadn't got rich parents. Anyway, separate topic, but Phil, thank you very much. And we go on to Matt in Lancashire.
Hi, Nigel.
Hello.
I'm a definite outer.
Oh, right, another one. Whoa.
Yeah, and I'm also a member of UKIP.
Oh, there we go.
But one of the questions that I wanted to ask you was that if by the awful chance that we end up staying in the EU, My personal opinion is I think we'll see a severe sort of brain drain and skill drain from this country as people move away. Now, in 2008, I tried to move to New Zealand.
Yeah.
Basically, because I'm a chartered building engineer, and my skills are in high demand over there, and it pays very well. But it's also quite high in demand in this country. But because of the way this country has changed so much, because of our membership of the European Union, I am mindful now to move away, to be honest, out of the UK. Not that that's what I wanted to do, and I just think that if we do end up staying in the European Union, I think it's basically the death knell for the UK. And
well, Matt, look, just think of it this way. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. You know, if we vote to stay in, they will never give us another vote, and we will be trapped inside something that I don't believe has got any chance of working, and I would be pessimistic if we voted to stay in. But, Matt, I think the momentum is in our direction. I think we've seen things such as Cologne, we see what's happening now with Turkey, and we say to ourselves we will be safer and better taking back control of our borders. So, come on, Matt, be upbeat, get out there and campaign, let's win this referendum. And we're going to take one more call before the break, and we're going to go to Stuart in Burnley. Stuart. Hello, hi.
Oh, good evening, Nigel. Nice to talk to you. I did meet you once at one of the Bolton business meetings.
Okay.
So that was nice to... just wondered, I wasn't old enough to vote in the original one, you know. I think my mum and my dad did at the time. What it is, I just wondered what your thoughts were on the effect of social media and how much of a difference it's going to be this time. You know, so how David Cameron is like, you know, it's pretty obvious to most people that it looks a bit like a pantomime, and he's
well, Stuart, you know what I mean? Stuart, he's trying to do what Harold Wilson did back in 1975 and pull the wool over our eyes. But there are two big fundamental differences. One is that we don't have the same deference and respect for our political class that we did 40 years ago. And two, the newspapers, all of which, the big ones, supported us staying in, this time they're going to be split down the middle on it. And the big change, and you've put your finger on it, is social media, is talk radio, all the different things that have happened that mean there are more opportunities for us to get our messages out. Right, well, that was a warm-up. I only had one near punch-up, but I hope we can have more in the course of the next hour. As we head towards the news, David Cameron will be up on the stage in a matter of minutes, and if we can get live some of his comments, we will bring them to you. He's in a bit of a tight spot. The so-called deal looks pretty pathetic and pretty weak. We'll be discussing this after the news. Back in a couple of minutes.
On FM, online, on your mobile, and on digital radio. Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 9 o'clock, the killer of schoolgirl Millie Dowler has now reportedly denied confessing to her abduction and murder. Lawyers for Levi Belfield have contacted Surrey Police over suggested covert recordings being made in a prison interview and have demanded access to the tape. Former Detective Colin Sutton investigated the 47-year-old who's serving a whole life sentence and says he's a cold, calculating killer.
He likes making trouble, he likes being the centre of attention, and he certainly likes being cruel to the families of his victims. We saw that during the first trial, the Metropolitan trial, and then through the Dowler trial. He was, cruel and abusive to victims' families, even while he was in court, of course, out of sight of the jury and the judge.
8 girls have been injured after it's reported a car mounted a curb near a school in Liverpool. 6 of the girls, aged 11 to 13, suffered broken bones near Belvedere Academy. An 80-year-old woman is helping police with inquiries. A 22-year-old medical student pleaded guilty to plotting an Islamic State group-style terror attack in London. Tariq Hassan from West London is on trial at the Old Bailey. 3 other men deny charges against them. Syria's president says he'll retake the entire country, but it could take a long time. Mr. Assad says he supports peace talks after world leaders agreed to plans for a temporary ceasefire. Meanwhile, actor George Clooney and his human rights lawyer wife have met the German Chancellor.
Mostly we talked about the idea that the work that she has done has been incredible, but we as the world have to start paying more attention to these people. These aren't people who are fleeing to just come have fun in Germany or to, these are people who are dying.
Rolf Harris has been charged with 7 new counts of indecent assault against women and girls as young as 12. The 85-year-old is due in court next month over alleged offences dating from 1971 to 2004. And The Independent and Independent on Sunday are strictly going online from March. Editor of the Sunday version, Lisa Markwell, has told LBC her whole team are reeling from the news.
The independent titles, which lots of people profess to love, and that's wonderful, just weren't selling in the volumes that we hoped, could sustain. And I think we've made a lot of cuts, but, proprietors have to be pragmatic. They don't have quite the same romantic views, sadly.
LBC weather, cold and frosty in parts with some wintry showers, lows of 2 degrees. Saturday starting off dry and cloudy, highs of 6 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Charles Rowe.
This is LBC, leading Britain's conversation with Nigel Farage. Call 0345 6060 973. Tweet at LBC. Text 84850. Nigel Farage on LBC.
So, David Cameron is up on his feet speaking in Hamburg in front of Angela Merkel, and this time next week he'll come back from a summit in Brussels with the deal, Dave's deal. Is Dave's deal good enough? Has he won some great concession to persuade you that we must stay part of this European Union, or are you convinced that actually it's costing us too much money and we've got to take back control of our borders? OK, we've got an hour of this to go, and I wonder whether anyone's mind has been changed over the course of the last few weeks. Well, my mind certainly hasn't been changed, and I think that Dave's renegotiation actually is one of the reasons why the outside now appear to be in the lead in the polls. I think people are very, very disappointed with what the Prime Minister appears to be bringing back. I wonder what Paul in Exeter thinks.
Hello, Nigel.
Good evening.
When we win the Get Out referendum, there ought to be an emergency government in place until 2020. Why do I say that? No pro-EU MPs allowed to sit in Westminster because they have continued to commit treason. Why do I say treason? It's because they usurped the Queen's subjects in 1972 and have continued to do so. And it's only now, after the 30-year ruling, that we're all in shock. The whole nation is in shock in terms of the treachery that our MPs have committed against the Queen's subjects.
Well, they've certainly behaved dishonestly, Paul.
A proportional representation, as per the last general election, needs to be sworn in. So, for instance, if Labour had 35% of the votes and Conservative had 45% of the votes, in terms of votes, every Englishman vote is then counted in the House of Commons, swearing an oath of allegiance to Her Majesty the Queen and her subjects, and Britain and its constitution. After all, Westminster is supposed to be the mother of all parliaments, not the sister, and therefore ought to reflect that position.
Well, Paul,
after its own people.
Paul, the idea that we need a fairer electoral system is one that I will agree with you on 100%. We got nearly 4 million votes and 1 MP. This has never happened before in British politics. So, yeah, I feel a bit hard done by this system. However, in practical terms, a vote to get out, which I agree with you, looks more likely, is not going to result in a proportional parliament. It's not going to result in an emergency government. But what we have to make sure.
Why not?
Because it's impossible, it's impracticable, and it isn't going to. I'd love it to, but it isn't going to happen. But what we have to make sure is that David Cameron, who has led these negotiations, all right, David Cameron cannot, in my opinion, stay as Prime Minister, having urged the nation to stay in. How could we trust someone to take us out and put through the will of the people who'd fought on the other side? And, you know, you do identify a problem, and that is that we'll need to make sure that the will of the people is carried out, and that we're not let down or betrayed by anybody. But we're not going to get a PR system overnight. Maybe one day in the future we will. And we move on to Peter in Shepherd's Bush. Peter, good evening.
Oh, good evening. How do you do?
I'm well. Come on.
Good. Well, I was just saying to the researcher there that, first of all, I respect your opinion politically, but I don't agree with a lot of it.
All right.
And I think that even if Cameron comes back with nothing, he's only gone out there to try and appease public sentiment, and I don't think it's a majority about the problems that are happening. I think what we could really point on is economic migration, etc. This is a problem for Europe to fix, and we can do that as a union rather than pull us out of it, lift up the ladder and shut the gates like you would like to do.
Well, no, Peter, can I just correct you there? I don't want to pull up the drawbridge. I want to control who comes over the drawbridge. And that's a very, very big difference. You know, I'm for trade, I'm for cooperation, I'm for a sensible immigration policy. I'm not for complete open doors, and presumably, from the tone of your argument, you know, you would join us up to the Schengen area and perhaps to the euro currency as well.
Well, I like your speculation and your cheap supposition. You can't tell me what you think I think. No, I don't think now. I think it's a part of being pro-union that the whole of the union gets together behind Brussels and we can sort this problem out in the Middle East of this mass migration. You know, what can we do as a little country as ourselves to solve that problem? Do what you do, shut the door. And I appreciate that you'd let certain people in under certain criteria. Yeah. I appreciate some of your stuff. However, pulling out of Europe will be a big mistake. That's my opinion.
No, fair enough. You've got that opinion, Peter, but all I can do is to say to you that we're not leaving Europe. This is the propaganda that's been fed to people. It's not Europe we're leaving, it's the European Political Union that we're leaving. I'm guessing you and I are never, ever, ever, ever going to agree on this one, and that maybe you're not one that can be persuaded, but thank you. And we move on to John in Hersham. John, hello.
Hello. I was at a meeting. I was two minds whether what to come out or stay in or whatever, but I was more like on the side of coming out.
Yeah.
But last night I went to a Leave campaign meeting in Leatherhead, and one of your colleagues was there. I can't remember her name. The woman she's been on Question Time a few times and things like that.
Diane James, probably.
That's it. And
yes.
She spoke very clearly and very, very openly about what we're saying and stuff, and she's very fair to the audience itself. And things that came out last night was extremely shocking, such as the amount of fraud that's allegedly going on in the European Union, the amount of money we're paying in. Well, that's 35 million, but the amount of money we give to other aspects of it, as in healthcare for people coming in or from abroad here, and stuff like that. And it's just quite... I think people need to go to one of these meetings and be open with the people and ask the right questions, because when you get asked the right questions, you get the right answers. And there's too many scary things going on. Like they want to put the price of fuel up by 5 to 10p to pay for migrants coming into Europe.
Well, that is certainly a proposal that has come from one of the German government ministers. Yes. I mean, John, actually, your call is very, very heartening, because, you know, we hear that the age of the public meeting is dead. And I do them night after night, week after week, all over the country, and often get home at 2, 3 in the morning from them from all over the place. The fact that you went along to one, listen to We're Convinced, is good. And what we're going to try and do is have as many of these public meetings, you know, right across the country. I'm signed up with an organisation called Go, Grassroots Out. And I mean, for example, next Friday night, we've booked the QE2 Centre in Westminster. There'll be a cross-party selection of politicians there from Labour, Conservative, UKIP, the DUP, you name it. And I would encourage people to attend these meetings, to engage in this. And I'll tell you why, because this is the single most important political decision that we're going to take in our lifetimes. And, John, you've engaged with it, and I'm pleased that Diane James was able to convince you. And we now go to Jane in Lewisham. Jane, good evening.
Oh, hello, Nigel.
Hello.
We've got so many problems, and we have to pull out of the EU Brussels waste of money club to begin to solve them. And as we begin to solve our own problems, we're going to naturally solve other people's problems. It's not a matter of pulling out of Europe. We will help Europe. It's a matter of pulling out of that awful club. And I can tell you, many people in Europe, even in Belgium, they want to come out of the club. Italy, they want to come out. You know, I mean, many countries. This club is ruining Europe.
I couldn't agree with you more. Actually, maybe we're the real pro-Europeans, because we recognise that a proper Europe is a Europe of different nation-states with different languages, different wines, different cheeses. It is the diversity of Europe that makes it great. The idea that it should all be put together under that appalling flag with an anthem that I refuse to stand for and run by a bunch of unelected old men is no good for anybody. Jane, you are a true believer. Thank you for your call. And I'm going to go to Richard in, where are you, Richard? Robertham. Rotherham. They've misspelt
South
it
Yorkshire.
there. South Yorkshire. I know Rotherham. We stood in a by-election there recently. Richard, what have you got for us?
There are a few things, to be honest with you, Nigel. I'm probably 60-40 in favour of staying in at the moment. The 60 is probably towards the end that I don't trust the Tories that are in power at the moment. They're going through with the trade union bill at the moment. They're trying to take all those powers away, and I think that there's a lot of protection with being in the EU. 40, just to back that up as well. In terms of the in-work benefits, there are aspects of that I do support. So I don't agree that if you have children in Europe, you should be able to send the money there.
Richard, can I just stop you a second?
Sure.
Whether Europe makes good law or bad law isn't the point. The point I'm making is that we should make our laws. Here's why. In a self-governing nation, if you change government, the government can change the law. If Europe makes a piece of law, there is nothing we, the electors, through the ballot box, can do to change any of it. And that's the point. Let's be a self-governing democracy.
I understand that, Nigel. I understand that. But at the same time, there's certain things that the Tories are pushing through now, like the enterprise bill that's going through at the moment. There's a few things that are squeezed into there, civil service pay, stuff like that. They're just squeezing in to get through, going through the House of Lords, House Commons. Yeah. Then to the House of Lords, little things that are squeezing through and they're not being reined back in. Now, my issue with that is that where does the protection come from then? Because they're trying to get the Bill of Rights through, but there's things in that
Richard, you're missing the point. I don't care if we have a communist government. I don't care if we have a communist government. What I care about is our ability to sack them and to change the rules. And I'm sorry, Richard, we've run out of time. Just to bring up to you that David Cameron in the last few minutes has said in Hamburg, Britain will never retreat from the world. And it is in Europe's interests for the UK to stay in a reformed European Union. There's a shock. He said the changes he was seeking to the UK's membership would make Europe more outward-looking and dynamic. He said that if he got what he wanted, he would campaign unequivocally for the UK to stay in. Well, I would point out that all he's doing is changing Britain's deal. He is not even attempting to reform the European Union. And I will take more of your calls after the break. You are listening to LBC with me, Nigel Farage.
From the LBC Travel Centre, good evening, I'm Andy Lake. The M25 still looking very slow after an accident earlier on. That's clockwise between Potters Bar and the A10 in Enfield. All lanes have now reopened though. Anti-clockwise still looking slow as well towards Godstone tonight. One lane is closed because of a broken down lorry and an oil spillage. The North Circular is still looking very slow towards Neasden. The usual roadworks delays haven't been helped by an accident as well tonight. And in the city, Upper Thames Street is queuing approaching the Suckle Superhighway works at London Bridge. On the rails, Great Northern have delays between King's Cross and Peterborough tonight. Keeping London moving. More live travel updates at lbc.co.uk.
LBC.
University fees. Broken washing machine. Parking fine. Like families, businesses need to be prepared for unexpected costs. That's why our Renault van range is now available with 4 years 0% APR, 4 years servicing, 4 years warranty, and 4 years roadside assistance. Renault vans. Business users only. Deposit payable. Renault Finance hire purchase. Available until March 31st. Participating dealers only. Subject to status. Conditions apply. See renault.co.uk/offers.
With Purple Bricks, landlords can save loads of money letting their properties, and we take care of everything. So chuck us your keys and we'll do the rest.
Hey!
Ow!
Sorry. Reflex action when it said chuck us your keys.
It was right on the nose. That's going to bruise.
It's turning purple already.
Visit purplebricks.com and book a free valuation.
Bonjour, guten tag, ciao, hola. When it comes to foreign languages, we can all get by, but can you speak accountant? It makes absolutely no sense at all. So it's a good job that Barnes Rofe are brilliant translators. They'll explain in simple terms how their strategic advice combined with clever tax planning is the key to a company's future success and growth. Don't speak accountant? Perhaps it's time you spoke to Barnes Rofe. Visit barnesrofe.com/radio.
Wearing glasses can be a bother. Hiding your face, fogging up with every hot cuppa, growing legs and walking away from where you left them only moments ago. Could you see life without them? Find out from the eye care specialists trusted by thousands of patients. Talk to Optegra Eye Health Care to learn whether lens replacement or laser eye surgery could help you say goodbye to your glasses. Book your free consultation now at optegra.com.
Oh, I love it round here. I wonder what the houses go for.
Oh, I'm not being funny, but I'm getting some pretty strong vibes from the houses on this road, telling me that two-bed flats in the area start around the 250k mark.
Really?
Yeah, and something in the ether says that most people living here are self-employed and enjoy a spot of cinema in their downtime.
Right. By ether, you mean the Zoopla app. I'm sitting right next to you, Chris.
Oh, look, this is our stop, isn't it? Yeah, this is our stop.
Sit down, Chris.
Know what you're doing. Start your property search with Zoopla.
Cheese, chocolate, skiing. The Swiss are great at many things, but when it comes to making fine watches, they're in a class of their own. Rolex, Patek Philippe, Omega, and more. They can be worth thousands, especially if you sell your quality Swiss watch to watches.co.uk. And we don't just pay well, we pay immediately. It couldn't be easier. And if you just fancy a change, we could take yours in part exchange. Watches.co.uk, the pre-owned Swiss watch specialist.
At Homebase, there's 20% off all Karcher pressure washers, like our Karcher K4 Compact Pressure Washer. Was $149.99, now only $119.99. Homebase.
Are you becoming too high profile? The shadow leader of the Labour Party?
These stories break. It completely disrupts my gardening schedule, I have to say.
Ken Livingstone and David Mellor. Saturday mornings from 10 on LBC.
Welcome back. It's me, Nigel Farage. We're discussing the EU referendum. And as I said, in the last few minutes, David Cameron has spoken in Hamburg. And what he said is, in my opinion, utter nonsense. It will convince nobody. He is not reforming the European Union, as he claims. He's getting Britain a deal. But it is a very, very small, insignificant deal. He has not won back one single new ability for Britain to make its own laws. Not one. Just a little bit of fiddling around the edges with benefits. I'm not convinced. I doubt you are. But who knows? Let's ask Gabriel in St Albans.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, Nigel.
Hello.
My name is Gabriel.
Yes.
I'm from Romania.
Yes.
I've been in the UK for the last 10 years, and we were never on benefits. We always respected British values, me and my wife. She's from the Philippines. Now, in regards to the referendum, I would like to ask you, I do understand Britain's concerns, and actually I'm supporting Britain in this referendum, but what will happen to Europeans that have been here for a long time and contributed to the economy if Britain leaves the EU?
That's a fair question, Gabriel, and I know there is some concern about this. Look, let me be clear. Anybody that came to this country legally is, of course, allowed to stay, as opposed to anybody that came illegally. That, despite my reservations, that we've simply let too many people in, but we have. What we have to do is to accept that. We have made some mistakes. You know, to have net migration running at more than 1/3 a year is simply too high. But hereafter, you know, we will not have an open door to unskilled migrant labour from southern and eastern Europe, whilst at the same time making it very difficult for people from the Commonwealth, for example, to come and work and get jobs here. So you have my assurance, my reassurance, that if people like you who've come to this country legally, and you haven't broken the law and all the rest of it. Absolutely nothing to fear at all.
It's a very sad how a lot of Romanians are bringing a very bad image to our country. And I hope the few of us who are actually supporting the British values hopefully can change this.
Well, Gabriel, thank you for that and your positive contribution. It's a very, very good call indeed, and thank you. Moving on to Stephen in Portsmouth.
Hello. I think that UKIP is often painted as the party of the old, but I think you really engage young people. Just want to say that. Also, so my question is, in the Sunday Express last weekend, there was a story about an EU supergroup, an anti-EU supergroup, that was going to merge together all these better off out and all these people without vote leave. And I was wondering what has happened to that. And people have been fighting for decades to get a an EU referendum and then obviously get out of the EU, not Europe, as some of your callers call it. Europe, actually the European Union. Yet they don't pull together now when it's their time. They've been waiting for years, and yet they seem to...
Well, look, what you read in the Sunday Express is right, and we've spent most of the week building it, and you'll see more of it next week. But basically, grassroots out go, the cross-party group of people who I've done 2 big meetings with, and this time next week I'll be on the stage in the QE2 Centre in Westminster with, are putting together a consortium that will bid for the designation from the Electoral Commission. UKIP are supporting them. Leave.eu are supporting them. There are various other political party groups that are supporting them, and all that, Stephen, will be revealed next week. The fact there is another group of people based in Westminster who call themselves Vote Leave, who refuse to team up with anybody, and who appear to tinker with ideas like having a double referendum so that we could vote a second time to stay in on better terms, doesn't appeal to me. So uniting everybody's not easy. But there is a group in Westminster who I don't know, maybe they're there to try and scupper what we're trying to do. We're pushing on, and by this time next week, Stephen, you will know exactly what this Grand Alliance is all about. OK, I'm going to Sam in Dudley in the West Midlands.
Hello, Mr. Farage.
Hello.
I'm kind of nonplussed about Mr. Cameron's renegotiation, as I feel we're not really that well informed about the EU. We don't often see what the EU does, let's say on the 6 o'clock or 10 o'clock news. And I'm kind of on the fence about it. I'm just wondering what you could say to kind of convince me that I should vote to leave.
Well, you're right in a way. I mean, I think that very often, our big news services in Britain haven't talked much about this over the years, and that really probably is a very big mistake. I would, Sam, say this to you, that, this is about a political union. We are members of a political union whose laws become the laws of our land and form the majority of our laws, whose courts can overrule ours, who prevent us from making our own trade deals and choosing our own friends in the world, and with whom we effectively have an open border to nearly 500 million people. My parents' generation voted for a trade deal. Sam, I want a trade deal. I want to trade with Europe, cooperate with Europe, but I absolutely insist that we are a self-governing democratic nation. And as I said to one of the previous callers, it's not about whether the EU makes a good law or a balmy law. It's about whether we, the voter, have the ability to change the laws by which we're governed. And in the European Union, we cannot do that. I'm for Britain being independent. I'm for democracy. Is that enough to convince you?
Well, it's a good start, but
right.
I'm worried about issues like antibiotic resistance, which is a very important issue. And there's something that you can, I suppose, use, because I spoke to Bill Etheridge, the local MEP for West Midlands, about this issue. And there are some things that we can do as a European Union that can be beneficial. But I understand that cheap migrant labour and all that, and that's dampening down wages.
Sam, if we want to make scientific breakthroughs, whether it's whatever field it's in, we don't need a flag, an anthem, and an association run by these old men to do it. We do it by cooperating across borders, as we've done, many, many times in defence with NATO, and whether it's through the World Bank or whatever else it may be. Let us cooperate. And if that's in the interests of science or business or technology, we don't need a monolithic club run from Brussels to do those things. And that, I think, really, Sam, is the point. I hope you're on the way to being convinced. We go on to Bill in Yorkshire. Bill, good evening.
Hello, Nigel.
Hi.
Hi. Now, I agree with you on pretty much everything. But the economic ramifications, what will they be? Because obviously there are tariffs and regulations, and it hasn't worked for everyone. I mean, look at Portugal. There was kings. And Greece was kings too. But, you know, now their economy is in ruins. What's going to happen with us? We don't have a trade deal with China, true, but the EU is a free market, you know. What's going to happen with that?
Well, you say it's a free market. It's actually a very expensive market because what it's done is to bring a whole massive series of burdensome regulations and high costs. Bill, what I'm interested in is us just having a simple ability to buy and sell goods and services from each other. It was the original concept of the common market. And as I've said to you earlier, through all the German motor cars and the trade deficit, that is not in doubt in any way at all. But it leaves us able to get rid of some of the laws that are perhaps too expensive. And I genuinely, honestly believe we'll be better off out. But, Bill, I put this to you. Whatever one says, you know, some will say better off, some will say worse off. In the end, it's about, are we a self-governing democratic nation or not? All right?
Exactly. Yeah. And of course, yeah.
You know,
so Merkel is acting as an emperor. You know, she thinks that she can rule over Europe, but she cannot, because she is not the king of Europe. What she is she's letting migrants in from Turkey and Turk roaches and all of these Turkish people, and, you know, Polacks don't like it.
Well, you know, Angela Merkel has done some very contentious things, but she is not to rule over us, Bill. I agree with you. Well, OK, that's been quite lively. And we have a fresh piece of news, which is that Barack Obama, who won't be around much longer, but Barack Obama is planning to make a big public reach out to persuade British voters to stay inside the European Union. The chair of the US Senate Foreign Relations Committee has revealed. Well, there you are. Big banks, big business, big government, all coming together to tell us what to do. It reminds me of the story when Lyndon Johnson came to Downing Street in 1966 and said to Harold Wilson, "We have a special relationship. You must send troops to Vietnam." And we told him to sling his hook. And I hope we tell Barack Obama, the most anti-British president there has ever been, I hope we tell him to sling his hook. But perhaps you're Obama fans. If you are, you can ring back after the next break. We have had a very, very lively debate. We've got half an hour left to go. Remember, if you want to get engaged in this debate, ring 0345 6060 973. But right now, it is 9:30, and we go to the latest headlines with Charles Rowe.
Levi Belfield has reportedly denied confessing to abducting and killing schoolgirl Millie Dowler. Surrey police said last month he'd admitted the crimes during a prison interview last year. David Cameron says he'll campaign unequivocally for Britain to stay in the EU if he gets what he wants. The Prime Minister's been giving a speech in Hamburg in Germany. And a medical student from West London has admitted plotting an Islamic State group-style terror attack in the city. 3 other men deny the charges against them. LBC weather, cold and frosty tonight in parts with some wintry showers in others, lows of 2 degrees. Saturday starting off dry and cloudy for most, highs of 6 degrees.
This is LBC, London.
It's how London buys its cars. Car Giant.
To get behind the wheel of your dream car and to enjoy giant choice and giant savings, there's only one place you've got to go.
Car Giant, of course. Car Giant. Car Giant.
With up to 8,000 used cars in stock, don't dream it, drive it. Search our latest selection of vehicles now at cargiant.co.uk.
It's how London buys its cars. Car Giant.
Having a baby? Prepare with Peppermint. When it comes to baby products, we won't be beaten on quality. All of the most trusted brands like Bugaboo, Stocker, Silver Cross and Maxi Cozy. See us for in-store demonstrations in Chiswick or Clapham. And from February the 19th to the 21st, find us at the Baby Show at Excel London. Get your discounted tickets, view our full range and find out about our pricing promise at peppermint.co.uk.
Purple Bricks offers a really easy money-saving service for letting your property.
So landlords can make big savings compared to some high street lettings agents.
This calls for a celebration.
We're on the radio. No one will know you've just pulled your shirt over your head like a footballer.
Oh, they'll know. They will know.
Visit purplebricks.com and book a free valuation.
Welcome to London's exquisite Indian dining experience, Marla Restaurant. The finest North Indian cuisine in the most charming setting. Find us in the heart of one of London's divine hidden gems, St Catherine's Dock. Marla Restaurant. Visit us in St Catherine's Dock or go to marlarestaurant.co.uk.
Marla. Discover a jewel in London's secret paradise.
We all like to splash out on holiday, relaxing and living a life of luxury. But you don't need to start the big spend getting to the airport. Just Airports is an affordable, hassle-free chauffeur service, exclusive to servicing London's airports, in style. You can get a quote and book online at justairports.com, via the Just Airports app, or by calling 0208 900 1666. Justairports.com. Spend your money out there, not getting there.
At Homebase, there's 20% off all Karcher pressure washers, like our Karcher K4 compact pressure washer. Was $149.99, now only $119.99. Homebase.
This is LBC with Nigel Farage.
Welcome back, and we're debating the European referendum. We're debating Mr. Cameron's deal. We're debating Barack Obama telling us what we should or should not do. But now we're going to Carol in Lincoln. Good evening.
Good evening, Nigel.
Hi, what have you got for me, Carol?
First of all, just to say regarding Barack Obama,
Yeah.
I think he needs to just butt out of this referendum.
Hear, hear.
issue, because it really isn't anything to do with America. It's about Britain. Secondly, my concern is regarding the election or the referendum. I'm worried about the fairness of how it's going to be, because it seems everything is stacked in favour of the Remains. For example, the BBC coverage has been completely disgusting regarding what's going on in Europe right now. And as far as Parliament is concerned, we've got people who are just looking after their political careers. And I'm concerned about the real British voter. If we go and vote to come out, which I'm going to do, and I'm proud to say I voted out the first time, how are we going to make sure that that referendum is a fair and true,
well, Carol, we
non-skewed thing?
We do, in theory, now have a system that should give us more fairness, and that we have an electoral commission. And they did, to be fair, when the government first proposed the question, amend the question so that it was a fairer, better question. We also have a series of spending limits for both sides. Now, whether they're going to be observed or not is another question. But
they weren't in Thanet, were they?
Well, quite. No, quite. Some remarkable work by Michael Crick on Channel 4 News this week, showing what appears to be deliberate, massive, willful overspending by one of our big political parties. We can call them the Conservatives if you wish to. I am worried about fairness, Carol. You're right. I'm worried that we have some of the very big businesses and big banks against us. I'm worried about the gutlessness of many people in Parliament. But, Carol, can I just say this to you? We have got a very big message, and it's a message, and I think our time has come. And even if they do outspend us, and even if they do cheat a little bit, I think we've got the momentum and the optimism on our side of the argument, and I genuinely believe that we are going to win. All right, so get out there and vote for us.
Can I say to you,
Yep.
I think we're going to win, because I think you are brilliant and everything you are doing is wonderful, and I think the new legislation that's come up is wonderful. Cross-party.
Yes.
That's what we need.
Yeah, grassroots out. Carol, thank you very much indeed. And we go on to Shahid in Kingston. Good evening.
Good evening, Nigel. How are you? All right?
Hi, yeah, good, thanks.
I noticed you have a fair few out callers coming in, so perhaps I might be able to provide a bit of a counterbalance.
Good.
I'd say I'm a pro-European if I were to be categorized, but I just had a question for you because I am open to persuasion. If the administrative capital of the European Union was actually London instead of Brussels, hypothetically, how would that change your stance?
Oh, not one little bit. I mean, look, the Europol, what's wrong with Interpol, I do not know, but Europol, the European Police Force, one of its main training headquarters is down in Hampshire. So what? I was told once that the European Central Bank may locate to London if we join the euro. So what? I'm not interested in where these things are based. I'm interested in the fact that what they've done is to replace and supplant our own institutions, our parliaments, and our courts and many of our regulators. So, no, I couldn't care less whether it's based in London. This is about believing that nation-state, and especially nation-state if it's run as a democracy, is a better model that people respect than the idea of building some big supranational club, which, frankly, virtually nobody in Europe has ever signed up to.
But it seems to me that the rhetoric is always anti-Brussels and anti, laws. Our laws are created overseas in Brussels. If they were actually created from a central base in London, and London, as a result, would benefit from more powers and more European conventions and things like that, surely that would mean that there'd be more power within Britain and be a greater standing throughout the world. Is that not right?
Well, Belgium isn't a stronger country because it's got the European institutions in Brussels, albeit there's a bit of money spent there. These institutions are separate from the nation-state in which they're in. When you're in the European Parliament, you're not really in France when it's in Strasbourg as part of the travelling circus, or Belgium. You're somewhere that is extraterritorial. Shahid, I do want my laws made in London, but I want them made in my parliament by people I can vote for, by people I can remove, and I will repeat the point to you that I made to a previous caller. If a European law is made, be it good or bad, there is nothing the entire electorate of Britain, our parliament or our government can do to change it. We cannot make and we cannot get rid of European law, and that is fundamentally undemocratic. In fact, it's anti-democratic. But look, I thank you very much for your call. And we go to Mike in Chichester.
Oh, hello, Nigel.
Hello.
I just wanted to say, first of all, that I think your communications on this issue are first class. And you are a salesman for the Out campaign.
Right. Well, I do my best,
Every salesman knows that there's always a downside to the product. There's always something in the product that doesn't meet the customer's requirements. Now, you're right that this is a hot issue now. It's hotting up. But since it's so important, I think leaning towards Out, we need to know from you, if we can, what are the downsides of leaving the EU?
The downsides are there will be some unemployment, Mike. We have to be honest about this. 73 British MEPs will lose their job. The British European Commissioner will lose his job. Lord Hill, his name. Ever heard of him? No, nobody else has either. Look, if you're a professional bureaucrat or a career politician, leaving the European Union is seriously bad news. If you're a giant multinational, leaving the European Union is bad news because you can set the laws that put out of business your small and medium-sized competitors. If you run, giant agricultural estates and you've been relying on cheap migrant labour to keep the cost of wages on the floor, you're going to have to pay a little bit more. So there are some people, Mike, who will pay a price for this, but they are the establishment, they are the rich, they are the powerful, and I genuinely believe that the beneficiaries of this will be ordinary British people, the 5 million men and women that run small businesses. And actually, this whole referendum is really the people versus the politicians, ordinary people against our career, professional, political class. And Mike, I tell you, as one salesman to another, hand on heart, that is the only downside that I can see. All right?
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. We go to Rory in Horsham. Rory, good evening.
Hi, Nigel. Thanks very much for taking my call. Yeah, actually, my call follows on perfectly from what you just said. I'm not 100% convinced either way so far. I've been following all the debates very carefully, but I'm getting increasingly suspicious about why so many of our MPs want to stay in Europe. They always say things like, we don't like Europe the way it is. We want it to change. But as you said, it hasn't changed in 40 years. So what is the real reason they want to stay in? Is it because of what you were saying earlier about these cushy jobs they're hoping to line up?
Because they're career politicians. Yeah. I was on a panel with them last night in Llanelli, and what matters to them isn't changing the country, isn't being radical and trying to, shape a bright new future. It's keeping on with their own miserable little careers, and they do that by going along with the big party line. I tell you what, Rory, it's pretty pathetic, isn't it?
It's pretty disgraceful, in my opinion, yeah. I mean, they have the power to make changes to our country. It's like they don't want these powers.
I know.
And this is really disgraceful.
I know. They're a rotten lot, but hopefully we can sort the referendum out and get a different kind of person in politics in Britain. I would love to see it. I really would. And thank you for your call. And we go to Alex in High Wycombe. Alex, good evening.
Yeah, good evening. The thing that I'm missing from a lot of these sort of discussions is there doesn't seem to be any appreciation of history. If you look at European history, you look at our history, you'll find that if you go right back to the Romans, that one way or another, everything affects us here, whatever happens on the continent. Now, I think there are three big players, basically, in Europe. There's Germany, there's France, and there's us. Now, if we leave, that means it's really Germany and France. And you find the smaller countries will fall behind one or the other. And we are a very major player in Europe. You can see that at the moment, by the way, that Angela Merkel and that's listening and sort of rushing around trying to please us.
She's not giving us very much, Alex, is she?
Well, I think if we left, I think that would have very major repercussions for Germany. It wouldn't be the end of the show, but it would have very major repercussions. Because what I'm thinking as well is there are a lot of countries like Denmark and Holland and Ireland who don't dare to say everything, but they expect Britain to say the things that they don't want to.
Well, Alex, you're making the traditional balance of power argument, and I guess, we could have a debate about whether Britain can best serve that balance of power argument within the European Union or without the European Union. But I would just say this to you about history, okay? And that's this. That there is no example in history of an artificial state being created without the consent of the citizens that ended peacefully and ended well. And the last time we tried this, it was called Yugoslavia, and frankly, it was a disaster.
It's been going quite a long time now, pretty well, and one of the great things living in Europe is that at least there's no prospect of a war with Germany and France and those.
No, and I agree with that, but I think, Alex, NATO had a lot more to do with that.
Well, I think peace is built from the bottom up, from communities getting together, not a bunch of generals. It's communities working together where you get real peace and stability.
And that's why the French voted against the European Constitution, the Dutch voted against the European Constitution, the Irish voted against the Lisbon Treaty, and the British are going to vote to leave the European Union. Alex, thank you for your call. We've got just 15 minutes left after this next break to take your calls. Have you made your mind up on the EU? Call me after the break on 0345 6060 973.
From the LBC Travel Centre, good evening, I'm Andy Lake. On the M25 in Godstone tonight, one lane's closed because of a broken down lorry and an oil spillage. That's been the case for some time now. There's also one lane closed at the Downworth interchange for repair work to the barriers that took a knock in an accident yesterday. The North Circular still looks very slow towards Neasden. There was an accident earlier towards the Iron Bridge. Delays are still reaching back to the Hanger Lane gyratory. In the city, Upper Thames Street's queuing approaching the cycle superhighway works at London Bridge, and London Road's been partially blocked tonight. That's in Thornton Heath near Croydon University Hospital. Keeping London moving. More live travel updates at lbc.co.uk.
LBC.
Head, shoulders, knees and toes, knees and toes. Head, shoulders, knees and toes, knees and toes, and eyes and mouth and nose. knees and toes.
You already get your eyes and teeth checked. Why leave out your ears? They're just as important. So if you've noticed a change in your hearing recently, come and test it for free at Boots. One free hearing check per year. Over 18s only.
Travel Pack. Have the right flight at the right price. In fact, we'll price match most worldwide flights if you find one cheaper elsewhere at the time of booking. So, if you need to book a flight, remember the Travel Pack price match. Call Travel Pack on 0208 903 9999. You won't find a better price for your flight. Travel Pack 0208 903 9999. ATOL protected. Excludes low-cost operators. Competitors must be ATOL licensed. Conditions apply.
Love is in the air this weekend, but is your relationship happy ever after? Take our definitive marriage test for better or for worse, and let the results tell you if your spouse is really your perfect partner. Plus, Caitlin Moran reveals all about the night she fell in love, only in the Times this Saturday.
At Homebase, there's 20% off all Karcher pressure washers, like our Karcher K4 compact pressure washer. Was $149.99, now only $119.99. Homebase.
Picture a range of colours in front of you. Now place them in order from darkest to lightest. Simple, right? What if they were all similar colours? In fact, what if they were 200 subtle shades of the same colour? And that colour was white. At Lexus, our Takumi Master Craftsmen put paint technicians through this test, ensuring the highest standards of craftsmanship down to every last stroke. Come and experience the amazing craftsmanship in the new Lexus CT Sport and Lexus IS Sport.
Now with 0% APR when financed over 2 years until the end of March. 0% APR representative available on the new Lexus CT Sport and Lexus IS Sport when flexibly financed through Lexus Connect. Terms and conditions apply. Finance subject to status to over 18s. Indemnities may be required.
There's such a fuss made about celebrities these days. The ones from the soaps, from reality TV, the ones who are famous for being famous. Well, Lloyds Bank think it's time to celebrate the right people. The plumbers, the florists, the architects, Britain's small businesses. And that's why they've designed their new business current account. It's straightforward and easy to use, it offers free electronic payments, and it comes with support from the Lloyds Business Management Team. So Britain's small businesses can keep doing what they do best.
Find out more at lloydsbank.com/business current account. Lloyds Bank PLC. Free electronic payments conditions apply.
This is LBC with Nigel Farage.
Welcome back to the EU referendum debate with me, Nigel Farage, and a big diversity of views on offer. And let's find out what Emma in Stratford has to say.
Hello, hi there.
Hello.
I've actually been volunteering for leave and offering to give up a day of my a day every week. What I'm sort of been seeing a lot in the media recently is that I feel exactly the same as you, that the two leave groups should join together. And all I care about is getting out of the EU and not getting caught up in the politics or the careerist issues as
well, Emma, going on. Quite right. And well done you for volunteering to give up a day a week to save our country. Quite right too. We need more like you. The problem is that the Vote Leave Westminster based group refused to do a deal and refused to merge with anybody. I've helped try and broke those negotiations. They seem to think they've got some God-given right to do it on their own. Look, I'm not going to go into this too much in detail, Emma. I've said already, we formed this grassroots organisation. We're bringing people together across the spectrum. But you know what? A lot of this is a sort of inside Westminster debate. Out there in the country, people are seeing the arguments and making their mind up. And I think, Emma, controlling our borders and being fearful that scenes like Cologne could happen in Britain in a few years' time, people, I think, are making their minds up anyway. And I would urge you, keep on volunteering, keep on helping, and thank you for being on the right side. All right, we're going to win, Emma, aren't we?
Yeah, I hope so. I watched your grassroots online the other day with Kate Huey and your speech, and I just felt so hopeful. I mean, over the years, I felt very upset when I've admitted that I wanted to come out of Europe. I've been called a kicker, all sorts of names.
Yes.
I'm quite sensitive, so I've had a tough time. But
yeah.
I'm 43, so I was 1 year old when we got up into this mess by Ted Heath. Thank you very much. And I'm really excited now, and I don't know if there's any way I can help go.
anything I can do. I just want to do what I can help and not have my energy wasted, is what I'm sort of saying.
Fine. No, we'll get on board. I think goes the way forward. You have a look at the website, make your own mind up. Emma, thank you very much indeed. We go to Ian in Stansted. Good morning, Ian. Good evening, Ian, sorry. Hi.
Don't know what time of day it is. Hello, Nigel.
Hi.
Thanks for taking the call. Just wanted to say, did you actually... Well, one of the ladies actually said it earlier. I actually don't believe for a moment that this is going to be a fair thing. I think it's going to be a complete and utter stitch-up. I think there's also a silent majority where you have columns of people who earn the top dollar money, who then pass that down to the next column, who pass it down to the next column, and they all fear the change. So really, the only people you've got left are the ones down the bottom, and they don't vote. Or a lot of them don't vote. Most of them don't vote, do they? And I think that's the situation you've got. That's why it's so tight. Otherwise, if you had every single person at the bottom, I think would if they actually knew what it stood for them, you would get a lot more votes.
Ian, what we have to do is to build a people's army on a massive scale. Emma, the previous caller, was part of it. We build a people's army on a massive scale, we get involved, and we commit to telling our friends and family, to explaining to them, why this referendum matters so much. And I tell you how we win, Ian. However much they try and fiddle things, however much, big business and all the rest of it, we win, Ian, by getting people who've probably never voted in their lives to understand this is our one opportunity to get our country back. And if we can convince them of that and excite them with that, we can win this referendum. Do you agree?
Well, yeah, completely, but I don't think it'll ever happen.
Well,
would,
if I thought like that, I wouldn't get out of bed tomorrow morning, would I? Come on, what's the matter with you? It's 1940, it's backs to the wall.
You've even got the media going. It's so obvious. I mean, when you watch the BBC News, it's all fizzled out. Everything about the EU is only brought up by two people, and that's Nick Ferrari and yourself.
Look, you can say that, but I'm having a fair go here on LBC. We've got 3 or 4 national newspapers are making our arguments every day. This is not 1975, Ian. This is our big chance to win, and win big. All you need to do, Ian, is to believe in Britain. All right? Thank you. We go to Jason in Leeds. Jason, good evening.
Good evening, Nigel. I've got a question. I wonder if you can help me out, really. What it is, I've always thought the European Union, freedom of migration rule was very unfair on the rest of the world. And the reason for that is when the government talks about controlling and reducing immigration, I mean, what they really mean is controlling immigration from outside the EU. So if we did leave the EU, could we see more immigration, more diversity from the rest of the world? Would it be a fairer system?
Well, look, I think the first thing to say, Jason, is honestly, frankly, our official net migration figure, which is 1/3 of a million a year, is too high. It's simply too high. The country can't cope with it. So we need a lower number. However, what we now do is make it as difficult as possible for people from outside the EU, and in many cases the Commonwealth, and we've learnt this week that, Kiwis and Aussies will have to pay an extra 200 quid a year just to be here to pay for their health bills, whilst the National Health Service is open to everybody from Southern and Eastern Europe. And actually, what we are offering post-European Union is a fairer immigration policy, because it'll in fact be an Australian-style immigration policy based on skills people have got to bring, medical insurance they bring with them, and not having a criminal record. And we will stop discriminating against our friends in the Commonwealth in favour of an open door to Europe. That's mad. So, Jason, yes, what we're proposing will actually it'll be far more selective, but it will be more equitable and more fair. And I hope you're convinced by that.
I am, definitely.
Good lad. Thank you very much indeed. We go on to Wilfred in Brentwood. Wilfred, good evening.
Oh, good evening. I am definitely out, as I stand for the local councillor. Right. The question is, what happens? My son lives in Ireland, in Kilkenny, Southern Ireland.
Yeah.
What happens to the situation with that and with Northern Ireland? Because I travel there quite a lot.
Well, don't forget, Wilfred, that actually we've had a free movement border with Ireland since the early 1920s. That's been in place, and we have a big shared history together. So, Wilfred, don't worry. Don't worry in the least about that. That is not a problem. Not unless that border was used for mass migration by others, but for free exchange between Ireland and Britain, not a problem. David Cameron is up on his feet in Hamburg speaking, and perhaps we can just go in live and listen to what he has to say. Or perhaps we can't. He's just stopped. There we are. Well, we tried and we failed. The Prime Minister has sat down just as I went to him. And these, I'm told, are the dangers of live radio. Never mind. We will cover quickly by going to Andy in Hampshire.
Oh, hello, Nigel.
Hello.
Thank you very much for taking my call. Just a quick question, I guess, a sort of yes or no sort of question. David Cameron has promised and guarantees this vote on coming out of the EU or staying in. I think that's done and dusted. We will get this vote. But he hasn't promised or guaranteed to act in accordance with the result of the vote.
Well, Andy, as a veteran of this,
will stitch up too much to do that.
As a veteran of this, I saw the Danes vote no to Maastricht and be made to vote again. I've seen the Irish twice vote no in referendums and be made to vote again in referendums that were so unfair they were frankly third world in terms of their conduct. And I've seen the French and Dutch reject the EU constitution and for those so-and-sos to rebrand it as the Lisbon Treaty and ram it through. We've got to win this referendum, Andy. We've got to win it well. And we then have to insist that this Prime Minister goes and that somebody is put in his place who has supported the outside in the referendum so that the will of the people gets done. I do not want to face 2 or 3 years down the road another referendum and a stitch-up to basically keep us inside, maybe an outer ring, but still to be part of that union. So, Andy, I do share your concerns about this. And it's funny, isn't it? In Norway, whenever there's a referendum, the people vote no, and yet the Norwegian politicians still would like Norway to be a part of it, and they've signed them up to Schengen and things like that without even asking them. So the great lesson of the story here, Andy, is don't trust the politicians, all right?
I couldn't agree more.
Good. Well, thank you very much indeed. Jane, we've got 30 seconds for a last call. Jane from Radlett, hello.
Hi, Nigel.
Hi.
Just quickly, what do the politicians or the leaders know that we don't know, that they're so adamant to stay part of this European Union?
Because it's part of the established order. It's a bigger stage on which they can strut. It guarantees them a career for a life. If they lose their job in Westminster, they might become a European commissioner. They are professional politicians. They are not, in my view, people of great principle. Look, thank you, everybody, for your fantastic calls and comments tonight. A massively wide range of views and divergence. David Cameron will come back next Friday. Next Friday, he is back. We may even find out by this time next week when the referendum is going to be. Believe you me, it is going to be on the 23rd of June. Coming up after me is Christo after 11 o'clock. But next, it's Nick Abbott. And thank you from me, Nigel Farage.
Thanks, Uncle Nige. Hallelujah, it's peace in Syria. That's what the American Secretary of State said, and he'd hardly finished that sentence when practically everyone fighting over there said, oh, no, it's not. And over here, the banking sector is in such dire straits, so unbalanced, so prone to collapse, that they have shelved all bonuses this year. Just kidding, it's another boffo payday, even if the bank in question did not make a profit. And the independent newspaper is to close. Which one will be next? Place your bets.
On FM, online, on your mobile, and on digital radio. Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 10 o'clock, it's reported